For a high-level deity transformation venerable, any distance within sight could be traversed with a single thought. It was just as he expected. When the thunder-winged middle-aged man sensed that Fang Chen was still alive, his killing intent soared sky-high. With a flash of teleportation, he instantly appeared behind Fang Chen. Without a second thought, he viciously struck at his vital point with a palm. In that split second, Fang Chen spun around abruptly. Massive clouds of dense demonic liquid suddenly shot out from his sleeve, while at the same time he was biting tightly on an already ignited wish paper in his mouth. His gaze was resolute as he roared, "I wish." The thunder-winged man's pupils contracted sharply, his heart pounding wildly. He was someone who had suffered greatly before, and knew deeply how fearsome the power of the wish paper, combined with the breath soil, was. If it happened again, he would have no chance for a second soul possession. His soul would completely dissipate on the spot. With a thought, he instantly teleported backwards in a violent retreat. But at the same time, a fierce light exploded in his eyes, and a terrifying bolt of lightning shot out from his pupils once again, heading straight for Fang Chen. He refused to believe that Fang Chen's life could be tougher than a spirit artifact. Who would have thought? Seeing him retreat, Fang Chen immediately extinguished the wish paper and, without a second thought, activated spatial teleportation to flee once more. Accompanied by an earth-shattering boom, that lightning bolt blasted fiercely onto the vast sea where Fang Chen had been, sending up towering sky-high tidal waves over 10,000 acres. Meanwhile, Fang Chen himself landed steadily on the beach, successfully standing on the continent. Only then did the thunder-winged man realize that Fang Chen's wish paper just now had been nothing but a feint. Furious and enraged, he roared thunderously, "You little bastard, you dare to toy with me." Fang Chen shrugged, his tone full of mockery. "So what if I toy with you? With the wish paper in hand, what can you do to me?" He backed away while shaking the wish paper in his hand, issuing a loud warning. The thunder-winged man's face darkened, his chest about to burst with fury. How could he endure such provocation? He immediately wanted to teleport over and kill Fang Chen before he could successfully make his wish. But as his gaze swept over the endless stretch of land behind Fang Chen, he forced himself to calm down. He had heard rumors about the Tai Kang Great Continent. Legends said it was a forbidden place for deity transformation cultivators. Entering rashly would cause something utterly terrifying. In such matters, it's better to believe it exists than to dismiss it as nothing. Fang Chen, who had been closely watching his movements, couldn't help but feel greatly disappointed. He had deliberately provoked the thunder-winged man with his words, precisely to lure him ashore and test whether the legends were true or false. Unexpectedly, this fellow, just like that venerable Xin Nai, had heard the legends of the continent. Fang Chen's mind whirled, and he taunted while slapping his chest. "What's the matter? Too scared to come? If you're a real brother, come ashore and chop me." The thunder-winged man's fists clenched until they creaked, wishing he could tear Fang Chen to shreds. But as a venerable experiencing the three declines of heaven and man, his mental fortitude was extraordinary. How could he be provoked so easily? His eyes flickered, and his figure abruptly teleported back among the monks of White Horse Temple. Then, with a casual grab, he seized a bloodied, gravely injured monk. His palm, surging with black kai, pressed ruthlessly onto the monk's bald head, his face contorted with savagery. "I can't chop you, but can't I chop these bald donkeys who helped you?" Fang Chen's expression changed drastically, and he shouted sternly. He didn't like the monks of White Horse Temple, but he couldn't bear to watch them suffer because of him. The thunder-winged man grinned viciously. "Come out within 3 breaths. Otherwise, I'll kill every single one of these bald donkeys, including that bodhisattva." Seeing that Fang Chen harbored compassion and couldn't bear to let these people be burdened by him, the thunder-winged man grew even more confident that he had Fang Chen by the throat. Fang Chen gritted his teeth, his eyes swiftly scanning over the wounded monks. When his gaze fell upon an old monk among them, his entire body jolted violently. It was an aged monk with a kind, benevolent face, serene eyes, and a solemn, dignified aura flowing around him. He was thin and emaciated, with dark, swarthy skin, looking somewhat wizened. He was none other than the Six Paths Shangren. Fang Chen's mind buzzed. No wonder the Six Paths Shangren had suddenly vanished without a trace. So, after parting ways at the Great Yin sect, he had actually been converted and inducted into the Buddhist order. It seemed that because he had once arranged for the Six Paths Shangren a status as a lay disciple of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva's disciples had overheard, and the Bodhisattva himself came personally, just as the six-path Shangren had wished. He truly took him as a disciple. 3. 2. The thunder, winged man's icy, bone-chilling count. Aon abruptly pulled Fang Chen back to reality. His face kept changing, with the six-paths Shangren among them. He absolutely could not stand by and watch the thunder, winged man slaughter them all. Fang Chen hurriedly stepped out of the continent, shouting, "I'm coming out, don't hurt them." The thunder, winged man's eyes showed a mocking expression. "I can't handle you. Also, put your hands out where I can see them." What he feared most was Fang Chen, secretly using the wish paper, so he must guard against any tricks. Fang Chen had no choice but to stretch out both hands and arms that had been tucked in his sleeves, so as not to arouse the thunder, winged man's suspicions, and cause him to harm the innocent. He walked step by step beyond the continent, his face showing a hint of unwillingness, and asked, "Senior, I'd like to ask you a question." The thunder, winged man snorted coldly. "Cut the chatter, get out here quickly, or I'll crush him to death right now." As he spoke, his 5 fingers suddenly exerted force, viciously digging into that monk's skull. Streams of crimson blood immediately gushed out, covering the monk's cheeks and making him let out an extremely pained groan. Fang Chen was greatly alarmed, quickening his pace. "I just want to know, why does the young emperor insist on killing me?" The thunder-winged man's face was full of venom as he spat. "Of course, it's because you deserve to die." At the thought that Fang Chen had caused him to lose the domain bestowed by the young emperor for nothing, he wished he could slice this brat into 1,000 pieces. Fang Chen continued walking. "Senior, why do you have to hate me? If you were in my place, being inexplicably ambushed and nearly dying 10 times over, could you resist seeking revenge? Destroying your young emperor's domain once was something I had no choice but to do." The thunder-winged man's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he said warily, "How do you know I lost the young emperor's domain once? Could it be you witnessed it? Wait, the death of Venerable Xinnai, could it be related to you as well?" He had always assumed that the killer of Venerable Xinnai was some venerable on the Tai Kang Great Continent, but only now did he suddenly realize that this youth before him also possessed the strength to slay Venerable Xinnai. Fang Chen remained silent, tacitly confirming it. The thunder-winged man, upon seeing this, was so enraged that he laughed instead. "Fine, so it was you, a cultivator of void-flowing thunder force, who killed Venerable Xinnai. It seems I can fulfill the young emperor's 2 tasks all by myself. Get over here. I will personally flay your skin and bring it to the young emperor to claim merit." Just as his vicious laughter rang out, a profoundly mysterious force suddenly enveloped the thunder-winged man out of nowhere. He froze in shock, and before he could react, his entire being vanished from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was standing on the very beach where Fang Chen had just been. Meanwhile, Fang Chen materialized out of thin air at the spot he had just occupied, and caught hold of the monk who had been taken hostage. The thunder-winged man's expression froze, his eyes filled with confusion. This is the power of the wish paper. But how could you still have a wish paper in your hand? At that moment, a tiny, round, reddish-brown head popped out from a mirror in Fang Chen's embrace. It was the little Killen, who was spitting out a mouthful of ashes with disdain. Fang Chen indeed wasn't holding the wish paper, but the little Killen could hold it in its mouth. It turned out that as soon as he had taken the monk hostage, Fang Chen had anticipated his fear of him using the wish paper, so he had handed the paper over to the little Killen in advance, and then looked for an opportunity to make a wish. The thunder-winged man's pupils slightly contracted, and he asked in shock and doubt, "But when did you make the wish?" Suddenly, his entire body shuddered violently as he completely realized. That seemingly unwilling question Fang Chen had asked just now, wasn't that precisely a wish for the two of them to swap positions? Realizing this, the thunder-winged man was both shocked and furious, trembling all over with rage. He had actually been tricked by this little bastard onto the continent. This was a forbidden zone for deity transformation. He looked down at his feet, standing firmly on the sandy beach, which was already within the continent's boundary. He couldn't help feeling a surge of terror. Without a second thought, he decisively teleported away from the continent's border and reappeared above the vast sea. Only when he realized he was completely unharmed did his frantically pounding heart finally calm down. He couldn't help but throw his head back and roar with laughter. "Ha ha ha, so the legend of the deity transformation prohibition is nothing but a legend. This mainland is far less frightening than the rumors claim. Boy, did your face turn green with fear. You spent countless resources making a wish just to switch places with me, yet here I stand, safe and sound. Just you wait?" But as he laughed, suddenly he felt as if a hand had seized him by the throat, unable to produce even a trace of laughter. Because both Fang Chen and the crowd of monks were staring at him with pupils sharply constricted. To be precise, they were staring behind him. Even the bodhisattva, as unperturbed as an ancient well, now rapidly shifted through a kaleidoscope of visages, each pair of eyes brimming with unparalleled shock. The middle-aged lightning, winged man's heart lurched violently, a faint chill crawling up his spine, as if some unimaginably dreadful presence behind him was silently staring at him. The sensation was exactly like a tiny frog fixed in the deadly gaze of a venomous serpent. An immense terror he had not felt in decades surged into his heart in an instant. His Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty, and he turned his head with rigid stiffness to look behind him. Behind him, the void had at some unknown moment silently split apart into a colossal fissure spanning the heavens and the earth. The rift was as deep and baleful as a great abyss, and within it, a pair of faint golden eyes were quietly watching him. In that fleeting instant their eyes met, every hair on the lightning, winged man's body stood on end, and bone, chilling cold, shot straight to the top of his skull. The divine halo behind his head, radiating 10,000 beams of light, exploded on the spot, scattering into countless crystalline shards. With his life-bound divine halo destroyed, the lightning, winged man, spiritually linked to it, suffered a grievous backlash. He coughed up a mouthful of dark blood, and his face rapidly turned a ghastly pale gold. A dread that sprang from the deepest depths of his soul made this peerless expert, who had already reached the 3 decays of a celestial, tremble uncontrollably like a sieve. From within the rift, the owner of those golden eyes finally spoke. His voice was calm and even, yet it descended like the divine voice of the heavenly Tao from the highest heavens. Deity transformation is forbidden to enter. Sages must halt their steps. Transgress this ancient prohibition, and even the Buddha cannot ferry you across. The lightning, winged man's pupils constricted sharply, and his voice took on a sobbing tone as he wailed in desperation. I did not set foot on the mainland intentionally. It was that Fang Chen who framed me. He framed me, I tell you. Yet his words still hung in the air when a muffled detonation followed. Under the gaze of those golden eyes, the lightning, winged man exploded where he stood, transforming into a thick mist of blood that scattered with the wind. Along with the splendid garments he wore, the unfathomably powerful spirit artifacts, the storage device that contained a world within, and the heaven-reaching, earth-grasping power of the Thunder Tao, all vanished completely in that instant. It was as if an invisible hand had utterly erased him from existence, leaving not the slightest trace behind. The terrifying rift slowly closed, and those golden eyes, which seemed to penetrate all ages, slowly sank into the boundless dark void. The sky above the Kangxi fell into a deathly silence. Only the blood-tinged, terrifying waves ceaselessly pounded the shore, sending out a chilling hua-hua sound again and again. Fang Chen, the monks, and even the bodhisattva with his unfathomable cultivation were all so terrified they dared not so much as breathe. A mere glance had crushed to death a supreme reverend of the 3 decays of a celestial. What kind of existence was the master of those golden eyes? From the voice, it seemed to be a woman. Could it be that mysterious empress from long ago, who willfully renamed Spirit Pearl Island to mainland, forcing the entire Taking province to redraw their maps overnight? It was a long while before Fang Chen emerged from his boundless shock. He inhaled sharply, his heart surging with towering waves of astonishment. So it turns out that the legend of deity transformation forbidden to enter, which had circulated for countless millennia, was incomplete. Because it was only the first half of this ancient prohibition. The complete prohibition should be, deity transformation is forbidden to enter, sages must halt their steps. Not only are deity transformation cultivators unable to set foot on the mainland, but even mighty beings of the sage realm who have transcended mortal existence may not lightly steep even half a pace upon it. Fang Chen felt the world spin around him. This barren mainland that had birthed and raised him, so incomparably familiar, now gave him an unprecedented sense of strangeness and mystery. What heaven-shaking, earth-shattering secret was hidden beneath this mainland? Why were all supreme experts forbidden from entering? Even the bodhisattva seemed frightened. He stared at the mainland for a long moment, unable to utter a word. The rumor of the deity transformation prohibition was ancient in origin. Even with his extensive experience, he could not say from which archaic epoch it had been passed down. He had once deeply doubted its veracity, dismissing it as a baseless tale. Yet he had never imagined that here today he would personally witness the rumor confirmed, and even see with his own eyes an indescribable, abyss-like existence. He did not doubt for a moment that if those terrifying golden eyes were to cast a gaze upon him, he too would instantly dissipate like smoke and be completely wiped from the world.
Amitabha, excellent, excellent.
It took the Bodhisattva a long while to recover. With lingering fear, he pressed his palms together and bowed with utmost reverence toward the mainland. Then he turned and said to Fang Chen, Almsgiver Fang, please bring out the hell-suppressing soul, pacifying sutra. This seat shall open it personally today. All he wanted now was to quickly copy the contents of the sutra, then flee far from this bizarre mainland, never wanting to approach it again for the rest of his life. The place where the Calamity Sage fell in ancient times, hailed by the world as the most perilous site in Taking Province, now seemed nothing but an empty reputation. The true Great Terror, the most perilous place, was this unremarkable mainland right before their eyes. Fang Chen pondered briefly, his gaze shifting to Six Paths Master, still under the control of White Horse Temple, and said solemnly, very well. However, release him first. The Bodhisattva didn't hesitate. He nodded slightly. Good. To obtain the sutra, he had even abandoned the thought of converting Fang Chen, let alone a mere Six Paths Master. The Bodhisattva immediately raised a hand, and a wisp of gentle Buddha light was gently drawn out from Six Paths Master's body. Just like the firmament demon emperor who was forced to return to secular life back then, Six Paths Master, who moments before wore an expression of sacred solemnity, after a brief moment of confusion, suddenly shuddered and cried out in alarm. Ah, Bodhisattva, have mercy and spare me. This has nothing to do with me. It was that little brat Fang Chen who made up all that nonsense, saying I was your lay disciple. Your grievance has its root in debtor. If you must convert someone, convert him. By the way, let me tell you a secret. That bodhi tree is on that little brat. You absolutely must not let him go. Of course, when you convert him, please don't ever say it was me who told you. Hearing this stream of nonsense, the Bodhisattva remained silent and speechless. The assembly of monks was also collectively struck dumb. Fang Chen, instead of getting angry, laughed, nodded, and said coldly, fine, I'll promise on behalf of the Bodhisattva, guaranteeing that the Bodhisattva won't let Fang Chen know. Six Paths Master immediately cupped his hands. A fawning smile plastered on his face. Thank you, you. Why does this voice sound so familiar? Puzzled, he tilted his head and saw that the speaker was a middle-aged monk with delicate features. He couldn't help but roll his eyes and scold with a haughty air. Who do you think you are? I'm talking to the Bodhisattva, and you dare interrupt. Fang Chen sneered coldly, reached up, and ripped off the skin mask from his face, revealing a young and handsome adolescent visage.
It's Fang Chen.
Six Paths Master's smile instantly froze, and he was so embarrassed he wished he could sink into the ground. His old face flushed bright red. He coughed dryly a few times. Cough, 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 Brother Fang. What a coincidence. Are you out for a stroll here too?
Have you had dinner yet?
Fang Chen's face darkened, veins bulging on his forehead. He turned to the Bodhisattva and said, Bodhisattva, this old wretch should be locked up in your Buddhist sect. Please don't ever let him out again. Only then did Six Paths Master fully realize the reason he could return to lay life was because Fang Chen had persuaded the Bodhisattva. He slapped his thigh, immediately plastered a shameless grin on his old face, and wailed as he lunged forward. Aya, Brother Fang, my good brother who would take a blade for me. I knew you would come to save me. Fang Chen coldly snorted and pushed him away. I risked my neck for you, and what do? You turn around and stab me in the back twice. You actually dared to go snitch about the Bodhi tree. Venerable Six Paths chuckled awkwardly, but then quickly remembered something. Pointing at his own bald head, still devoid of hair, he fumed, and you blame me. Look at what you've done. You fabricated that story of me being a lay disciple of the Bodhisattva, which made the Bodhisattva come and fix me good. Hearing this, Fang Chen immediately felt a pang of guilt. Indeed, he had truly screwed over Venerable Six Paths. Had he not held the sutra of suppressing hell and pacifying souls as a bargaining chip, he and Venerable Six Paths, this pair of pitiful brothers in misfortune, would probably both be shaving their heads and becoming monks at White Horse Temple today. If Venerable Six Paths was an old bald donkey, then Fang Chen would be a little bald donkey. He dry coughed, rubbed his nose, and said awkwardly, Cough, let's not point fingers now. This time we'll call it even. The Bodhisattva's gaze was smiling as he looked at the two clowns, one old and one young, and chuckled softly. You two donors are truly amusing. How about you both become my lay disciples? Upon hearing this, Venerable Six Paths was thoroughly terrified. He shook his head like a pellet drum. No, let Fang Chen do it. I've already done it. It's no fun. Fang Chen glared at him fiercely and quickly deferred to the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, you'd better choose this old thing. He has work experience as a disciple, so he should be given priority in enrollment. The Bodhisattva smiled faintly and no longer pressed them. All right, since neither of you is willing, I shall not force you. Please take out the Sutra of Suppressing Hell and Pacifying Souls, and let us examine it together. Fang Chen was puzzled and asked doubtfully, Bodhisattva, are you not at all surprised that the Bodhi tree is on my person? The Bodhisattva smiled calmly, looking as though he held all wisdom in his grasp. I have long known of this. Fang Chen was deeply shocked and blurted out, when did you know that the Bodhi tree was actually in my possession? The Bodhisattva replied serenely, I knew from the moment you produced that string of soul, suppressing Buddhist beads. That string of soul, suppressing Buddhist beads, was the possession of a Vajra realm eminent monk from Tianju 1,000 years ago. He journeyed far to the Taking Great region to aid us in resisting the ancient giants. After the Great War ended, a temple from Tianju came seeking him, stating that he had brought a supreme Buddhist treasure with him, a bod, high seed. Therefore, when you brought out that string of beads, I already understood that the Bodhi tree you spoke of must have been nurtured from that very Bodhi seed, and that the tree as it would be in your possession. It turned out that the secret of the Bodhi tree concealed on him had long been as clear as day to the Bodhisattva, who had simply never exposed it, and had even played along with Fang Chen's monthly game of furnishing fake clues, putting on this act for so long. Come to think of it, in the past month, White Horse Temple indeed had not asked him for any more clues about the Bodhi tree. This only confirmed that they actually did not care about clues, because they had long known where the Bodhi tree was. White Horse Temple's true wariness of Fang Chen had always been solely because he could move that sky-piercing black pillar. Fang Chen was even more bewildered and pressed. Then, Bodhisattva, do you not desire this Bodhi tree? Having witnessed so many of the Bodhisattva's heaven-reaching methods, he did not think his former self could have stopped the Bodhisattva from taking it by force. The Bodhisattva gazed into the distance and said calmly, had I obtained it 10 years earlier, I might have been confident in nurturing another Bodhisattva for our Buddhist sect. But now it is all too late. Only by meditating and seeking enlightenment under the Bodhi tree for 10 years could one have the chance to suddenly realize Bodhisattvahood. Yet now the great catastrophe is imminent. With merely 3 months remaining, time is simply too short. Fang Chen nodded in understanding. So at first the Bodhisattva was indeed extremely eager for the Bodhi tree, but after learning from the heavenly halberd Asura that the ancient giants would descend again in 3 months, he completely abandoned that notion. So then, is this Bodhi tree useless? Fang Chen asked offhandedly. He felt no particular regret. This Buddhist divine tree had never been of any use to an unbeliever like him. Originally, Fang Chen had kept that divine tree as a trump card to counterbalance White Horse Temple. But now that balancing effect was gone, and carrying it around seemed superfluous. Just as his thoughts were churning, the Bodhisattva suddenly smiled and spoke leisurely. The karmic connections of this world are wonderfully profound. Our White Horse Temple, and many Buddhist temples in Tianju, could not find this divine tree despite bitter searching, yet it was found by you. This is your fateful bond with this tree. Keep it by your side. Perhaps it will serve great use in the future. Who can say? Upon hearing this, Fang Chen nodded gently. He suppressed the thought of discarding the divine tree, took a deep breath, and then brought out the Sutra of Suppressing Hell and Pacifying Souls, saying, all right, now let us examine this sutra together. Venerable Six Paths hurriedly leaned in, eyes gleaming, and exclaimed in wonder, my goodness, a black Buddhist scripture. Could this be the one that White Horse Temple and the Giant family have been searching for centuries? When did you get your hands on such a treasure? Let me have a look and see what incredible scriptures are hidden inside. Fang Chen pushed away his old face that was way too close with disgust, frowning. Stay away from me. That chaotic lightning aura of yours stinks to high heaven. Venerable Six Paths immediately blew his beard and glared, protesting. I haven't cultivated any thunder. Path divine abilities for ages. Where would a lightning aura come from? Fang Chen couldn't help but be stunned. The jade scent, detection chip in his mouth, still retained a thin layer of medicinal effect, and indeed, he had just smelled a trace of a lightning aura. But upon hearing Venerable Six Paths say this, he grew deeply surprised. If this lightning aura was not from Venerable Six Paths, then whose could it be? That middle-aged man with the thunder wings had been reduced to ashes, not even a speck remaining. Fang Chen's mind stirred, and he gently sniffed again. With that sniff, his brows furrowed tightly, and his gaze abruptly shot toward the depths of the sea below. That chaotic lightning aura was actually emanating from the depths of the sea. This meant that there was yet another person cultivating thunder, path divine abilities lurking here. Fang Chen's mind buzzed loudly, jolting him to the core. He suddenly recalled that during the fierce battle with the Tooth, Star Giant King, the region, level teleportation formation in the sea, had twice emitted bizarre spatial fluctuations. Could it be that the people who had come from Young Emperor Mountain in Tianju were not just one, but two? Moreover, recalling that the dying Thunderwing middle-aged man had said he was only responsible for investigating the death of Heart, Sin Venerable, and that killing Fang Chen was merely an afterthought to eliminate someone who cultivated void, flowing thunder force. Didn't this imply that the other person had come specifically to take his life? At this thought, Fang Chen's heart abruptly raced, and his expression changed drastically. Without hesitation, he instantly employed spatial arts and teleported away from his original spot. In the next instant, he appeared over 100 zhang away. However, before he could fully steady himself, he abruptly felt a slight pressure on his right shoulder. A hand veiled in raging thunder placed itself neither heavily nor lightly on his shoulder. An icy voice tinged with derision whispered right behind his ear, "Almost let you escape." Fang Chen whipped his head around and saw a young man in black, around 27 or 28, standing behind him with a half-smile. Behind the young man's head, a divine ring hovered conspicuously, upon which two flame marks were clearly engraved. This was actually a young venerable of the divinity transformation realm, who had endured the second heavenly decay. Fang Chen's heart sank sharply. He forced himself to remain composed, cupped his fist, and said, "Sir, are you also from Young Emperor Mountain? I have something here that I'd like you to take a look at." Since this person had so precisely targeted him, he probably had already confirmed that Fang Chen was the practitioner of void, flowing thunder force. If he didn't quickly devise a plan, the opponent would undoubtedly show no mercy and strike to kill. Time was extremely tight, and there was no room to slowly unfold some scheme. He had to instantly overawe the opponent. And the only thing he could try was the serrated sword that Compassion Mirror Venerable had gifted him. Since both were from Young Emperor Mountain, the other party should recognize Compassion Mirror Venerable's supreme Great Spirit Sword, right? However, it remained uncertain whether this person, acting on the young emperor's secret decree, would acknowledge his bluff. This was precisely why he had refrained from unleashing this sword against the middle-aged Lei Yi earlier. There were simply too many uncertainties. But now there was no time for deliberation. He could only take a gamble. Yet what made Fang Chen's pupils contract sharply was that the black-clad young man merely sneered coldly and said with indifference, "There is no need. I saw clearly how the initial venerable died. He underestimated you and gave you the chance to turn the tables. I will never repeat his mistake." Before his words even faded, killing intent blazed in the black-clad youth's eyes, and the palm pressing on Fang Chen's shoulder suddenly slammed down with ruthless force. A full-force strike from a venerable of the two decays of the celestial being. How terrifyingly peerless was its dominance. How could Fang Chen's mere nascent soul physique possibly resist it? If this palm landed squarely, he would surely be crushed to dust on the spot, his soul scattered and spirit annihilated. The Bodhisattva in the distance had no time to intervene and assist. Everything happened far too quickly, entirely within a flash of lightning and spark of flint. The assembled monks had not even grasped what was happening before the black-clad youth suddenly struck with lethal intent, leaving Fang Chen not the slightest chance of survival. Fang Chen's vision darkened, and a bitter self-mockery rose unbidden in his heart. He had barely managed to scheme the middle-aged Lei Yi to death with all his wits, only to find a terrifying existence had been lurking all along, solely to kill him. In the next moment, a heart-rending, excruciating pain tore through his shoulder. The black-clad youth's palm force had already erupted, penetrating his flesh with overwhelming sharpness. To ensure Fang Chen's absolute death, the black-clad youth unleashed the full might of a venerable of the two decays of the celestial being in this strike. Once the blow fell, there would be no further doubt. Fang Chen could not even mobilize a shred of divine art to counterattack. He had never imagined that death could come so suddenly, so violently. Time seemed to freeze completely in that instant. The Bodhisattva's eyes shrank sharply, the Six Paths Elder opened his mouth in a desperate shout, and the crowd of monks hitched up their robes and sprinted for their lives. Just wait the next moment, and Fang Chen would dissolve into a cloud of scarlet blood mist. At this hair's breadth juncture, suddenly an earth-shaking moo, a cry of a green ox, resplendent and vast, swept across heaven and earth. That sound was extremely penetrating, shaking the surrounding space into violent tremors. The black-clad youth was also shaken by the sudden cry, his body trembling, and his palm hurtling toward Fang Chen, involuntarily paused. After he regained his senses, a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes, and he prepared to strike Fang Chen again, reckless of all else. But before his palm could descend, an enormous hoof of a green ox materialized out of thin air beside him, carrying a peerless gale, force, and kicked fiercely into his shoulder. With a muffled bang, the black-clad youth of the two decays of the celestial being was actually sent flying like a kite with its string cut, kicked away by that hoof. The black-clad youth hurtled straight backward for miles, a thick, coppery sweetness welling up in his throat. He steadied himself and cast a shocked gaze into the distance. Only then did he discover that beside Fang Chen, a majestic great green ox had appeared at some unknown time. It was precisely this great green ox that had just kicked him flying with a violent buck of its hind hoof. And upon the back of that great green ox sat a slovenly old Taoist, clad in tattered robes and utterly unkempt in a lazy manner. The old Taoist's face was covered with densely packed pustules, as if wrapped in a toad's warty skin, a sight that made one's scalp tingle. At that moment, as Fang Chen was saved, those facial pustules miraculously disappeared one by one at a speed visible to the naked eye. The slovenly old Taoist exhaled a long breath of turbid air, touched his increasingly smooth cheek with relief, then bared a mouthful of yellow teeth in a wide grin and chuckled, just in time. If he had arrived a moment later and Fang Chen had died, he would have immediately suffered heavenly punishment and perished on the spot. The black-clad youth who had tumbled far away recognized the old man and was immediately taken aback. He asked in a solemn voice, "Elder Tianji, why have you come to take in Grand Province?" This was the legendary elusive existence, famed to show his head but never his tail. Elder Tianji snorted crossly and said, "If I didn't come, this old life of mine would have been killed by your young Emperor Mountain. Go back and tell your young Emperor, stop sending people to bring trouble upon Fang Chen. If you want to court death yourselves, don't drag this old Taoist into it." Hearing this, the black-clad youth was inwardly astounded. He sized up Fang Chen, who was similarly dressed in black, with eyes full of disbelief. What was this young man's background that he could receive such protection from Elder Tianji? Moreover, from Elder Tianji's words, he seemed to even be somewhat wary of Fang Chen, as if Fang Chen bore some deadly great karma on his person. The black-clad youth's gaze flickered rapidly a few times, and finally he nodded slightly, saying, "Since Elder Tianji personally comes forward to protect him, this junior will earn to report farewell." With Elder Tianji personally intervening, even if his mission had failed, it was pardonable, and the young emperor would likely not heavily punish him. With that, he flashed and was about to depart. Elder Tianji suddenly gave another heavy snort and barked, "Wait. Leave all the Thunder Force in your possession behind, as compensation for Fang Chen."
What?
The black-clad youth's face instantly darkened, and he said coldly, "Senior, please do not force a man to do the impossible." He had already given enough face to Elder Tianji by letting Fang Chen go. Now he was being asked to leave behind the Thunder Force he had cultivated so painstakingly. This was going far beyond what was tolerable. Elder Tianji sneered, "I am actually saving you, and you think you're the one suffering a loss." Others might not know, but Elder Tianji's heart was as clear as a mirror. How terrifying were the two hidden heavenly secrets on Fang Chen's body. Today, this black-clad youth failed to kill Fang Chen, but in the future, he was certain to face Fang Chen's bloody revenge. The calamity of the ancient giants was about to arrive. Two deity transformation venerables had already fallen at Fang Chen's hands, which was already a tremendous loss for the Middle Earth. There must not be a third. Making this black-clad youth hand over his Thunder Force was to dissolve this fatal tribulation for him. The black-clad youth's expression changed drastically. If anyone else had spoken such profoundly mysterious words, he would have scoffed, but coming from Elder Tianji's mouth, it made his hairs stand on end. Recalling that even the initial venerable had died miserably at Fang Chen's hands, given enough time, it was definitely not impossible for Fang Chen to kill him too. After a fierce pang of heartache, he finally, with great reluctance, produced a Thunder Mountain. The Thunder Mountain's surface shone with multicolored light, with arcs of lightning leaping from it. It was about 8 zhang tall, and in terms of quality, it was not much inferior to the one left to Fang Chen by the Heart Demon Venerable. He gently set down the Thunder Mountain, cast a deep look at Fang Chen, then without a word flickered away. Only, when he had completely vanished, did the matter come to a close. Elder Tianji then revealed a smile, baring his yellow teeth, and with a casual wave, sent the sparkling thunder mountain floating to Fang Chen. He chuckled and said, "Little friend Fang, you've been frightened." Fang Chen glanced at the thunder mountain before him, then examined Elder Tianji before him with immense curiosity. This person he had heard of quite some time ago, because it was this very man who had spread the rumor that the continent concealed an Earth Kai Dragon Pearl that only an ancient sage could master. This had triggered the turmoil at the Tiger Demon Emperor's Cave Manor, drawing many experts from taking Grand Province to vie for it. But he had never imagined that this Elder Tianji was an existence of such lofty status. With just a few words, he had caused a venerable of the 2 decays of the celestial being, who had come to assassinate him, to retreat of his own accord. Fang Chen reined in his scattered thoughts, cupped his fists in gratitude, and said, "Many thanks for the rescue, Senior Tianji." As he said this, he couldn't resist glancing at the great green ox. Was this ox considered a member of the demon clan? The power of that hoof just now had actually kicked a venerable of the 2 decays of the celestial being flying away. That strength was at least at the 2 decays of the celestial being, right. Elder Tianji stepped forward, waving his hand. "No need to thank me. This old Taoist owes you." Fang Chen showed a puzzled look. "Why do you say that, Senior?" Elder Tianji's old face reddened with embarrassment. How could he admit outright that it was he who had assisted the heart demon venerable in divining that Fang Chen was the cultivator of the void, flowing thunder force? He could only mumble evasively, "All matters have their cause and effect. No need to ask further. Keep this thunder mountain, and our accounts are settled. From now on, we owe each other nothing." Deep within Fang Chen's eyes, a hint of vigilance flickered. In this world who shows kindness without reason. Tianji Elder kept insisting that he owed him, but the 2 of them had never crossed paths before, had they? Now, with the other party saving his life and offering him Thunder Mountain, it was hard not to grow suspicious. At that moment, Tianting Bodhisattva smiled with a sense of release and spoke in a magnetic, unhurried voice. "I accept it." The grudges between you and Venerable Xinnai, along with all the dangers that have unfolded today, all stem from a single divination by Tianji Elder. He suffered heavenly retribution for it, and has rushed here today precisely to make amends for his mistake. A divination. In an instant, the entire sequence of cause and effect surged through Fang Chen's mind. That day, Venerable Xinnai barged into the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, adamantly insisting that he was the prime suspect. So it turned out that Tianji Elder had divined the Heavenly Secrets and helped Venerable Xinnai track him down. At this realization, a surge of inexplicable rage shot straight to the top of Fang Chen's head. Had it not been for Tianji Elder, even with his heaven-reaching abilities, Venerable Xinnai would never have been able to trace him. In that case, Venerable Xinnai would have simply returned to young Emperor Mountain after failing his mission. How could he have met his end at his hands? And certainly, from his death, the young Emperor would not have dispatched 2 even more terrifying venerables to descend upon this place. "So it was your doing." Fang Chen whipped his head around and glared furiously at Tianji Elder. Tianji Elder was scolded until he was fuming and glaring. Then, flustered and exasperated, he turned to look at Tianting Bodhisattva and said, "You bald donkey, not only are your ears sharp, but your mouth runs even more. How did the Central Land ever agree to your grand vow of hearing the voices of all sentient beings?" Others might not be privy to the secret dealings between Tianji Elder and Venerable Xinnai. But how could Tianting Bodhisattva fail to hear them? He then turned back somewhat begrudgingly, meeting Fang Chen's eyes that seemed about to spew fire, coughed dryly in embarrassment, and said, "Didn't this old Taoist rush over to save you, precisely to settle this karmic debt? All right then, I will give you another item as compensation." As he spoke, he reached out and produced a thunder mark no larger than the pad of a thumb. Though small, the mark brimmed with incredibly dense essence power. Tianji Elder explained, "This is something I specially requested when Venerable Xinnai came to me for divination. I am giving it to you now. It should help you cultivate your void-flowing thunder force to the great completion stage." Thunder essence? To think such a thing even existed. The rage in Fang Chen's eyes gradually subsided, and he said, "Very well, then let our debts be wiped clean. Better to quit while ahead." Otherwise, could he really do anything to Tianji Elder? Tianji Elder instantly heaved a sigh of relief, and with a face full of reluctance, tossed the thunder essence to Fang Chen, muttering, You really got away with a bargain. Let us never meet again, you little freak. With that, he clamped his legs against the ox's flanks and shouted, "Let's go." But just at that moment, Fang Chen suddenly called out to him, "Senior, wait. Someone once entrusted this junior to deliver a letter to you." Fang Chen had not forgotten that before leaving the continent for the take in great state, he had met with Priestess Lingian. Priestess Lingian had personally handed him that letter, instructing that if he ever had the chance to meet a fellow called Tianji Elder, he should deliver it to him. Now that he had finally met the intended recipient, it was only right to fulfill Priestess Lingian's request. Tianji Elder looked astonished and turned back, asking, "Who?" "I'm not familiar with anyone from your take in great state." Fang Chen shook his head and replied frankly, "I'm only responsible for delivering the letter. As for anything else, I am also unclear." Even as he said this, he was thoroughly puzzled inside. Before meeting Tianji Elder, he hadn't thought there was anything unusual about Priestess Lingian's letter. Yet after witnessing Tianji Elder's cultivation, which was at least at the level of a spirit severing venerable, he couldn't help but be greatly astonished. What kind of strength did Priestess Lingian really possess? How could she be connected to a mysterious and unfathomable great power like Tianji Elder? Tianji Elder also showed confusion, extending his hand and saying, "The letter, bring it here and let me see." Fang Chen complied and took out the letter. In the next instant, the letter teleported into thin air and appeared in Tianji Elder's grimy old hand. Tianji Elder furrowed his gray brows and unfolded the letter to read. Who would have thought, with just one glance, he would shriek in fright? He saw him stumble sideways and actually tumble off the broad back of the black ox, falling with a splash into the icy seawater. Yet even so, he still held the letter aloft with both hands, not daring to let the slightest drop of water touch it. His appearance was like that of a common mortal, holding an imperial edict with utmost awe and trepidation. Trembling all over, he scrambled up from the water and said in a quavering voice, She is still alive." Fang Chen watched this with a face full of suspicion. Who was this she that Tianji Elder spoke of? Could it be Priestess Lingian? Or was it someone even more formidable? Even Tianting Bodhisattva off to the side grew curious. A light of wisdom flickered in his eyes, and he was clearly racking his brain over just who this she mentioned by Tianji Elder could be. For an existence that could inspire such awe and reverence in Tianji Elder, he almost couldn't imagine what kind of fearsome great power that must be. Tianji Elder gulped hard several times, barely managing to suppress the tempestuous turmoil in his heart, his aged eyes trembling as they shifted toward the contents of the letter. Though it was merely a small sheet of paper with only a few strokes of writing. Tianji Elder none the less read it over and over for a full incense stick's worth of time. He studied every single character with earnest scrutiny, not daring to skim over any with the slightest carelessness. After reading, his face held both reverence and a hint of embarrassment. Finally, his gaze fell upon Fang Chen, his eyes filled with utmost caution, even his demeanor became polite, even taking on a note of deference. He actually cupped his hands in a salute and asked, "Fellow Taoist Fang, that?" Halfway through his words, he paused, then amended, "The person who wrote this letter, did they leave any other instructions?" Could it really be Priestess Lingian who inspired such dread in Tianji Elder? A tempestuous surge of shock also rose in Fang Chen's heart. Just what status did Priestess Lingian truly hold? To be able to frighten Tianji Elder to such a degree. Yet when he had dealt with her, aside from finding her somewhat mysterious, he had never felt anything particularly special, had he? He clearly remembered that when he had first met Priestess Lingian, he had even threatened her with that aphrodisiac powder, 6 Union Immortal. Haven't I still been jumping around? Alive and well. With a speculative look, he answered honestly, "There were no extra instructions. I was only told to deliver the letter to you." "But what did the letter say?" "You seem to be in quite a quandary, Senior." Tianji Elder's old face instantly flushed bright red, and he said in embarrassment, "The letter ordered 2 things. One is that I divine a fortune for you, whether good or ill. The other is that I go streaking and run a full circuit around the 9 provinces of the central land." PFFD. Fang Chen nearly popped his eyes out of their sockets. "What? Streaking? And run a loop around the 9 provinces? And it's for this mysterious and unfathomable Tianji Elder to do. How could Priestess Lingian dare write such a thing? Was she not afraid of angering Tianji Elder?" Yet what utterly floored Fang Chen was that Tianji Elder showed not the slightest intention of resistance. Instead, he urged him on. Come over here, I'll do the divination for you right now.
Fang Chen was utterly shocked in his heart.
Priestess Lingy wasn't she just a demon clan, priestess from the southern border continent. He stepped forward in a daze, his eyes filled with indescribable shock. Tianji Elder first glanced cautiously toward the direction of the continent, his face full of restlessness and unease. He was just about to form a hand seal and perform the divination. Tianting Bodhisattva pondered briefly and said, I have heard that Tianji Elder can intercept the heavenly secrets of all things and know both past and future. This seat is willing to make a grand vow of heavenly hearing, and requests that Tianji Elder also divine the future for me once. After a moment's thought, Tianji Elder agreed. Fine, then I'll divine for both of you at the same time. He paused, then glanced at the Six Paths Adept not far away. You were also affected by my initial divination and got entangled in the karma. You come over as well. I'll throw in a divination for you too. After all, Fang Chen had orchestrated the Six Paths Perfected One's impersonation of the Bodhisattva's lay disciple precisely to dispel suspicions concerning the void-flowing thunder energy. His induction into the Buddhist order did indeed bear a thread of karmic entanglement with old man Tianji. The Six Paths Perfected One naturally welcomed the arrangement, finding nothing objectionable in it. Thus, the three of them gathered together before old man Tianji. Old man Tianji slowly closed his eyes and began to intercept the nebulous strands of heavenly secrets from the unseen. In the sky above, a vast, majestic eye instantly materialized, blotting out the sun and covering the firmament. It seemed capable of seeing through to the very roots of all creation. Moments later, that colossal eye silently vanished. Old man Tianji kept his eyes shut, not opening them for a long while. The heavenly hearing bodhisattva, as if sensing something, said in a calm tone, could it be that one among us bears a fate of extreme peril? Only after these words fell did old man Tianji slowly open his eyes. His deep yet turbid gaze first settled upon the bodhisattva, a flicker of grief so thick it seemed insoluble passing through his eyes. Then he looked at the Six Paths Perfected One, his eyes brimming with profound pity. Finally, when he fixed his gaze upon Fang Chen, his aged face actually betrayed a trace of astonishment he could scarcely conceal. Having swept his gaze over the three, he spoke in an exceedingly complex tone, his voice tinged with hoarseness. All three of you will die. The words struck their hearts like an invisible sledgehammer, reverberating with a muffled, crushing echo. Even the heavenly hearing bodhisattva, who had long harbored premonitions of fate, could not help but display a flicker of stunned discomposure the instant the divination was revealed. He remained silent for a long moment, then pressed his palms together and softly chanted, Amitabha. Birth, aging, sickness, and death are all natural cause and effect. Why cling to anything? Why go against heaven's will? The Six Paths Perfected One, in contrast, appeared quite calm, saying unhurriedly, I am but a remnant soul who barely managed to seize a body for rebirth. My lifespan has long been nearly exhausted. As for the word death, I am not afraid. The only thing on my mind is to find my long-lost daughter before I die. Fang Chen, however, stood utterly petrified, unable to regain his senses for a long time. In disbelief, he raised a hand to point at himself and asked hoarsely, Senior Tianji, you mean, I will also die? Although he had weathered countless perilous life, and death crises before, truly learning that his own death was destined still shook him to the core, leaving him unable to accept it. Old man Tianji looked at him and nodded his head solemnly. Fang Chen gritted his teeth, clinging to a last shred of hope as he asked, Will my body be destroyed, yet my soul still remain in this world? As long as his soul endured, he would have the chance to seize another body and be reborn. But old man Tianji shook his head, denying it in a grave and complex tone. It is the end of your heavenly mandate, body dead, soul extinguished, reduced utterly to dust. Fang Chen's body violently swayed. He stumbled back half a step in a daze. Only with great difficulty had he made it to this day, was everything truly about to come to an abrupt halt. In that moment, a kaleidoscope of memories flashed through his mind, the high hopes that everyone in the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion had placed upon him. The peerless countenances of Fairy Yunsheng, Gong Caiyi, and Venerable Zhenyan flickered past. Also surfacing were the expectant gazes of Liu Ruxu, Chen Siling, Yu Mingzhu, and Ling Shu. A bone, deep pain and unwillingness surged from the depths of his heart, nearly suffocating him. He clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white and demanded, how long until this happens? Old man Tianji slowly closed his eyes and said heavily, not long now. Fang Chen's heart pounded wildly, and he pressed on. Then how will I die? Old man Tianji fell silent for a long while before slowly uttering a few words. You will die at the hand of someone you trust most. Someone I trust most. Fang Chen stood rooted, perplexed. He had always been cautious, and never placed his trust lightly. Anyone who could earn his trust had to be a person of impeccable character. If their character was beyond reproach, then why would they kill him? A tightness gripped Fang Chen's throat, and he asked urgently, who is it? Old man Tianji shook his head with a sigh. I do not know. What I divined was a heavenly secret, not a precise prediction of the future. Heavenly secrets are inherently vague and ambiguous. Like blind men touching an elephant, they cannot be described in concrete terms. What I have just said is already all that I know. Fang Chen sank into complete silence. For a moment he felt utterly despairing, as if his heart had been hollowed out. The Six Paths Perfected One, his face showing forbearance, asked with a glimmer of hope, Senior Tianji, may I ask, is a divined heavenly secret certain to be fulfilled? Is there even the slightest possibility of evading this calamity through some method? I am already a candle flickering in the wind. Death for me is nothing, but that lad Fang is truly too much of a pity. He is so young, with unparalleled talent. Can heaven's secret really not be rewritten to spare him from death? Old man Tianji tilted his head skyward and let out a desolate sigh. Heavenly secrets. Heavenly secrets are fate ordained by heaven. This is determined by the heavens, and there is absolutely no principle of altering it. Even if an ancient sage were to personally descend, it could not be done. A supremely bitter smile tugged at the corner of Fang Chen's mouth. He had also harbored such wishful thinking in his heart. He had thought this divination might be like the foresight of the five-star giant king, where paying a sufficient price could overturn heaven and earth. Yet never did he imagine that even an ancient sage could not alter a person's heaven, ordained death tribulation. Old man Tianji raised a hand to pat his shoulder and sighed deeply. Every person has their own destiny. Cherish well the little time you have left. Having said this, he turned to the heavenly hearing bodhisattva and said gravely, you will be the first to meet your fate and perish. Make preparations early. The moment his words fell, old man Tianji suddenly felt a searing, fiery pain on his cheek. Hastily he produced a bronze mirror and took a look, only to see that his aged face, which had just barely recovered, had once again erupted with several pustules. Even his crown of grey, white hair instantly turned even more withered and white. His face immediately twisted in heartache as he wailed miserably, Aya, my handsome old face. Such a great loss this time. Divining heavenly secrets had always required paying a dreadful price. Calculating the deaths of 3 people simultaneously made the backlash even more horrifically immense. Yet this was not what troubled him the most. Because on the missive, there was still a second request. With an embarrassed expression, he surveyed those around him, cleared his throat, and said, well, this old man is about to take off his clothes. None of you have any strange fetishes, I hope. Upon hearing this, the monks silently turned around. Only then did old man Tianji reluctantly strip off his tattered garments. Bare, bottomed, he leaped up and landed steadily on the back of the great blue ox, then gave its rump a slap, cursing and grumbling, Stupid ox, what are you standing around for? Hurry up and go. The great blue ox abruptly turned its head and let out a long, lowing moo, as if inquiring about the next destination. Old man Tianji's aged face instantly flushed crimson, and he cursed furiously. Where else? We're going to run a lap around all the provinces, of course. Moo? Stop bellowing. If we attract the Sea Demon clan, will I still have a life left to live? Moo, moo. Stupid ox, I told you to stop mooing. If you moo again, we'll have red, braised beef tonight. Moo, 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 tilde. Upon the vast and boundless blue sea, a great blue ox carrying a stark, naked, cursing old man galloped atop the waves, leaving behind a trail of resounding moos. Such a comical scene did not draw even a hint of a smile from Fang Chen and the others. The monks immediately crowded around the bodhisattva. Abbot Puguang, his face full of compassion, said in a low voice, Bodhisattva, the Buddha will surely protect you. Grief was thick in the eyes of all the monks, utterly unable to accept the heavenly secret that the heavenly hearing bodhisattva would soon meet his tribulation and fall. A smile of serene acceptance lingered at the corner of the heavenly hearing bodhisattva's lips as he said calmly, the road home is set, my heart has finally found peace. Next, this seat shall spare no effort to prepare for the world-ending calamity, and seek out yet another thread of heavenly secret for the monks of White Horse Temple. The sorrow in the monks' eyes deepened, and as one, they pressed their palms together and bowed their heads in silence. The heavenly hearing Bodhisattva's gaze shifted to Fang Chen, and he consoled him with a smile. Patron Fang, do not be disheartened. Death is but the inevitable law of life, merely a difference of sooner or later, today or tomorrow. To do meaningful things within a finite life is the greatest responsibility that life bestows upon us. I hope you will soon regain your spirits. The multitudes of living beings in the Taking Great Province are all still waiting for you. Fang Chen cupped his hands in a daze, his voice hoarse. Thank you, Bodhisattva, for showing me the way. He looked down at the Buddhist scripture in his hand, then handed it over. This scripture, he said, is for you. The heavenly listening Bodhisattva, however, gently shook her head and sighed. This item holds no meaning for me anymore. If Benefactor Fang truly has an affinity with our Buddha, then one day you might consider passing this scripture along to a certain great Bodhisattva, allowing this lineage to continue. This was a supreme Buddhist scripture that only great Bodhisattvas who had attained the fruition of Buddhahood needed to cultivate. And he could no longer wait for the day he would become a great Bodhisattva of attained enlightenment. Heavenly listening Bodhisattva pressed her palms together and bowed slightly to Fang Chen and Senior Liu Dao. Then, surrounded by the assembled monks, she turned and walked away, her departing figure desolate and resolute. Senior Liu Dao let out a long sigh and stepped forward to console him. Young Fang, I know your heart is heavy with sorrow. But the less time we have left, the more we must not waste a single moment. We must accomplish what matters most within the limited time we have. From now on, I will spare no effort in searching for my daughter. So long as I can find her, even if it means dying right after, I will have no regrets. Fang Chen forced a faint smile and nodded. I know. Regarding the matter of your daughter, I suggest you go and meet with Bai Xin. I hope she can help you. Bai Xin. A look of great confusion immediately appeared on Senior Liu Dao's face. He frowned. That wretched girl who keeps chasing me relentlessly. You aren't suggesting that she is my daughter, are you? Don't joke around. If my daughter were still alive, she would be an old woman by now. How could she be a little slip of a girl? Fang Chen hesitated briefly, but still decided to temporarily conceal Bai Xin's identity as the reincarnation of a true devil. He said with a serious expression, I'm not certain either, which is why you need to verify it yourself. Upon hearing these words, Senior Liu Dao's aged pupils quivered fiercely. From what he knew of Fang Chen, this kid would never say such things lightly unless he was 70 to 80% certain. Could it be that Bai Xin truly is his daughter, separated from him for over 50 years? His gaunt body began to tremble slightly, his lips quivered uncontrollably, and his voice was low and choked with emotion as he stammered, All right, I'll go right away. I'll go see for myself. If she truly is my daughter, then I, Fang, will kowtow to you in gratitude. Before the words had even faded, without waiting for Fang Chen's reply, he clutched a heart that was almost leaping out of his chest and transformed into a streak of light, racing wildly towards Taking Great Province. Fang Chen watched him disappear into the distance. The spirit that he had just barely mustered crumbled back into desolation in an instant. He slowly walked to a cold reef and sat down, staring blankly at the distant, boundless sky. He watched the drifting clouds gather and scatter without pattern, watched the weary birds fly homeward to the woods. And he watched the last sliver of twilight slowly fade away below the pitch-black horizon. In this moment, an unprecedented sense of desolation flooded his heart like a tide. The heavens and earth are vast, the world is so immense. Could it really be that there is no place to accommodate a single person like me? A deep bitterness spread across Fang Chen's lips. At that moment, sensing his thick, inescapable sorrow, the little Qilin hurriedly emerged from the spatial mirror. It leaped lightly and landed steadily on Fang Chen's shoulder. Then it stretched out two fluffy little paws and gently clasped his face. Its fluffy little face gently nuzzled against Fang Chen's neck. As the cool evening breeze blew by in gusts, it gave Fang Chen the only warmth he had in that moment. Fang Chen raised a hand and stroked its head, mocking himself. Your master is truly a deceiving liar. I often said I was prepared for death, but when I learned that I would truly die, I couldn't face it calmly. I now understand why the great venerable Wugu betrayed his ideals and abandoned his original intention to protect all living beings. Because in the face of death, one whose cultivation is insufficient cannot face it. What the world calls fearlessness of death is merely ignorance of death. Once you know the date of your death, no one can be at peace. So it is with sages, and so it is with me. Listening to Fang Chen's desolate words, tears quickly welled up in the little Qilin's bright, black, and white eyes. It rubbed its eyes with its paws and said, with a thick nasal tone, "I don't want my master to die." Fang Chen looked at the little creature before him, wanting to cry but holding back, and deep regret rolled through his heart. His own low spirits had already genuinely affected the little Killen. In the future, it would certainly affect Yunshang and the others as well. Since fate was already sealed, why should he continue to wallow in self-pity, causing everyone around him to suffer along with him? What must come will surely come. It will not be delayed by even a moment because of his fear or despair. Why not, in this final stretch of time, leave them with a few more magnificent sunset clouds and a few more gentle spring breezes? He gradually swept away the desolation from his heart, lifted his hand to gently wipe the moisture from the corner of the little Killen's eyes, and smiled. "Silly, your master hasn't died yet. The heaven's mechanism elder said to seize pleasure in time. The bodhisattva said to give life weight. Senior Li Yud, Ao said to do meaningful things. And I say, one who hears the Tao in the morning may die content in the evening. If I can accomplish everything I wish to do before death, then there is nothing to regret about dying. So..." As he spoke, he stood up, his face once again suffused with a smile. "From now on, I will do what I want to do, protect the homeland that once nurtured my growth. Love those who once deeply loved me. See the world I once yearned to see." The little Killen vigorously wiped its tears and nodded emphatically. "I'll stay with my master." Suddenly, a crisp, clear round of applause came from overhead. They saw the space above them warp, and a young man and woman materialized out of thin air. The young woman wore a long red dress, the evening breeze gently blowing her beautiful hair and fluttering the hem of her skirt. Her skin was as white as snow, and her features were exquisitely beautiful, as if meticulously carved by master craftsmen, without a single flaw. However, she appeared somewhat frail, with a sickly air, gently leaning against the young man beside her. The young man, by contrast, had red lips and white teeth, wore a jade crown, and had long hair cascading like a waterfall, truly exceptionally handsome. The young man clapped his hands while laughing aloud. "A fine one who hears the Tao may die content. No wonder the Bodhisattva wanted to guide you into the Buddhist sect. It seems my judgment back then was spot on." Fang Chen stared blankly for a long while before recognizing the other party, his jaw nearly dropping. Fayin Vajra. The young monk smiled slightly and descended from the air with the girl, greeting him. "Brother Fang, long time no see." Fang Chen could scarcely believe his eyes. Standing before him now was actually that devout young monk from back then. Only after a while did he regain his composure and ask, "You really left the monastic life?" Fayin Vajra smiled and tightened his grip on the girl's hand beside him, saying, "Can leaving the monastic life be faked?" A deeply unreal feeling surged within Fang Chen's heart. How could someone like Fayin Vajra, so single-mindedly devoted to Buddhism, renounce his vows for a woman? He involuntarily turned his gaze to the red-dressed girl beside him. Her appearance was indeed stunningly beautiful, radiating a captivating charm. But that alone shouldn't be enough to make a Vajra, who had ascetically cultivated Buddhist law for 18 years, suddenly flee the Sangha. Right. Could it be that this Asura maiden had employed some secret technique to disturb Fayin Vajra's Buddhist heart? Fang Chen frowned slightly and asked, "Fayin, is this the remnant soul of the Asura you encountered in the heavenly realm?" Fayin Vajra nodded and replied, "Her name is Yue, and she has already reconstructed her body." Fang Chen's frown deepened. Reconstructed her body. What does that mean? Logically, shouldn't it be body possession instead? After thinking for a moment, he asked again, "Miss Yue, which lineage of the Asura clan do you belong to?" Yue's crystalline eyes coolly sized up Fang Chen before withdrawing her gaze, and she did not reply. Fayin Vajra hastily smoothed things over. "Yue doesn't like to talk to people. Brother Fang, please don't be offended. I sensed the Bodhisattva's aura and originally intended to come and lend you a hand. But when I arrived, I witnessed the heaven's mechanism, elder divining the heavenly secrets for the three of you. Even more unexpectedly, I never imagined that Brother Fang would have such a fate." As he said this, the expression on his face swiftly darkened. Fang Chen said calmly, "Life and death are predestined. There's no need to dwell on it. I'll be content as long as I have no regrets for the rest of my days." "You can no longer return to the Buddhist sect. What are your plans from now on?" Fajin Jinggang gently embraced Yue, smiling lightly. "I want to accompany Yue and travel across the 9 provinces to behold the heavens and earth, witness the mountains and rivers, and see all living beings." Upon hearing this, Fang Chen suddenly felt a twinge of envy in his heart. Fajin can accompany his beloved, roam the world, and do everything they wish to do. Yet he is busy with countless affairs day in and day out, and can never find such an opportunity. Even the little time he has left in his remaining life is hard to spare for the ones he loves. He raised his hand and patted Fajin on the shoulder, saying, "Go, be free for me." Fajin Jinggang said with a solemn expression, "Brother Fang, take care. When I return, I will fight the ancient giants by your side." Fang Chen cupped his fist in return and said, "You as well." The two thus parted ways. Fang Chen watched as the two figures gradually receded into the distance. It was not until their figures completely vanished at the edge of his sight that Fang Chen withdrew his gaze and murmured lowly, "What a formidable female Asura, to be able to simultaneously block the senses of the heavenly secret elder and the bodhisattva." Since Fajin witnessed the heavenly secret elder's divination, it means he was present at the scene. Yet among all present, not a single person noticed his presence. With Fajin's strength, he could absolutely not achieve such a feat. The greatest possibility is that the sickly-looking female Asura made a move to shield everything. Just what level of cultivation would one need to accomplish this? Thinking of this, Fang Chen took out the moon mirror and wrote in Hellscript, "Pick a good name, Hunxiu. Is there a type of Asura that can make people fall in love at first sight, even causing a monk to renounce his vows for her?" After a short while, a reply came through the moon mirror. "Spectacles, yes, the enticing charm Asura lineage." Enticing charm. Could it be similar to those women among humans who cultivate charm techniques? Fang Chen recalled Yue's cool and aloof temperament, then picked up the brush again and wrote, "Pick a good name, but the other party doesn't look seductive at all, on the contrary, she is very pure." The other end of the moon mirror fell silent for a moment before Hunxiu replied again. "Spectacles, are you sure that monk renounced his vows because of her?" "Pick a good name, not sure, just a guess." "Spectacles, then you had better pray she is not of the enticing charm Asura lineage. Asuras of this lineage are born alluring and full of charm, but if they cultivate to the imperial realm, they will instead return to simplicity, shedding all their seductive aura." Imperial realm. Fang Chen's pupils abruptly contracted. That Asura named Yue was actually such a terrifying existence of that level. The moon mirror sounded again. "Spectacles, anything else." "Pick a good name. Does the soul-suppressing sutra of the prison have any special use for your Asura race?" "Spectacles, never heard of it, but it seems like a good thing. If you don't want it, you can give it to me." The corner of Fang Chen's mouth twitched slightly, and he silently closed the moon mirror. Hunxiu had been staying in the Buddhist domains of the celestial realm and the hell realm. She likely did not know about this matter. He stared deeply in the direction where Fajin had disappeared and muttered under his breath, "An Asura emperor, it shouldn't be right." In the distant horizon, Fajin and Yue were flying side by side just above the vast sea. The sea demons in the water could not help but float up from beneath the surface, staring at Yue with infatuation, not even blinking their eyes. Yue turned her head imperceptibly and glanced in the direction of Fang Chen. Her red lips parted slightly, her voice as pleasant as silver bells, as she slowly said, "This person named Fang Chen is indeed somewhat extraordinary." Fajin laughed, "Of course. When he saw you, he didn't succumb to your invisible allure. He is the first since you came to the Central Plains." Yue nodded once, then gently shook her head, saying, "That's not what I meant." Fajin asked in surprise, "Oh, what aspect are you referring to?" Yue said, "It's his calmness in facing life and death. In just a short while, he went from being disheartened to calmly confronting death. That is not easy to achieve. Many sages who have lived for 1,000 years may not be so composed when facing death. Take me, for example. Even with only a wisp of remnant soul left, I still want to cling to you to survive." Fajin laughed involuntarily. "I've said before, Brother Fang is a man of great wisdom. That single phrase, 'one may die in the evening if he heard the way in the morning,' is enough to make me ashamed of my inadequacy. My cultivation is still far from enough. Come, let us roam the 9 provinces and experience the true world." The mainland. Fang Chen stepped onto this familiar land, a deep contemplative look appearing in his eyes. Fang Chen slowly exhaled and said to himself, "Since I have returned to where everything began, it is time to seek the Dao that belongs to me." His gaze focused, and his tone conveyed a hint of determination. "It would be best if, before I die, I can break through to the deity transformation realm and kill a few more giant kings for the Central Plains." As soon as the words left his mouth, he soared into the sky, slowly closing his eyes, allowing his body to drift along with the wind and clouds. In his mind, however, he fell into deep contemplation. Fang Chen whispered in his heart. Master Zinni said that his own Dao lies along the path he came by. And this continent is precisely the path he has walked all the way here. Scenes from the past surged up in his mind like yesterday's tide. Fang Chen remembered how he had lived under the roof of the Zhu family for 10 years, and at 18 married Liu Ruyan, only for her to break off the engagement and ultimately marry Liu Ruxu instead. To marry her, he had desperately saved up for the bride price, forcibly broke through his cultivation, fought Wang Yingfeng, and battled Lu Zheng. Afterwards, he entered the Azure Cloud sect. At that time, with no spiritual root, he was ignored by all. It was Liu Qingxian and Gong Caiyi who took care of him, Wen Hongyao and Zhao Wuji who favored him, and even more so, several grand elders who saw his extraordinary nature that all owed him to truly integrate into the Azure Cloud sect. Not long after, the beast tide came. He carried out missions for the Azure Cloud sect, rushing back and forth among the 9 sects, winning honor for the sect. Later, when the beast tide erupted and the battle at Boundary Mountain suddenly broke out, disciples of various sects died tragically. Fu Kejun passed away with regrets, while he fought desperately, madly pursuing the demon moon. After the great battle subsided, he encountered the Cloud Rosy Consort, then fell into the Demon Emperor's court, and ultimately in the Tiger Demon Emperor's lair, he risked his life testing the poison to save the Cloud Rosy Consort, forging a bond of good karma. Finally, to protect Lingshu, he fought the Demon Emperor to the death. Fortunately, Priest Lingyan intervened, and Lingshu was able to be resurrected. Fang Chen slightly opened his eyes, and a faint glimmer of enlightenment arose in his heart. He murmured lowly, it seems, all along this journey, I have always been protecting others. Protecting Liu Ruxu, protecting the Azure Cloud sect, protecting the lands of the 9 sects, protecting the Cloud Rosy Consort, protecting Lingshu. Could it be that the Dao I have walked is that of protection? The more he thought, the brighter the fog before his eyes became. There emerged a sense of clarity that pierced through layers of haze and touched the true essence. The Dao of protection. Protect those I love, protect those who love me, protect the mountains and rivers I cherish, and protect the endless human race I am so attached to. Protection is the path I came by. Fang Chen muttered to himself, feeling the thought in his chest become increasingly clear. The Dao that had troubled him for so long finally had a coherent thread at this moment. The little Kilin nestled in his chest seemed to sense something, poking out its furry head, its eyes showing joy. Master, have you finally found your own Dao? Fang Chen nodded and said, it seems so. Seems. The little Kilin showed a puzzled expression. Fang Chen smiled and explained, don't worry. I've only just sorted out some clues. Let me properly savor this Dao of protection. He closed his eyes again, letting his body drift with the wind. 1 day passed. Morning clouds and evening glow took turns brushing across his cheeks, light and darkness alternating to watch over him. 2 days passed. A heavy downpour washed his body, raindrops clinging affectionately to his hair and between his brows. 3 days passed. The cloud sea cradled his body, as if roaming in an immortal palace, free and joyful, until a moist, warm breeze brushed against his face. Fang Chen finally opened his eyes, his pupils flashing with a gleaming light that revealed the clarity of profound enlightenment. Deep within those eyes, there was also a faint flicker of fervor and determination. That was exactly the sign of pursuing a certain great Dao to its utmost. Fang Chen resolutely declared in his heart, I will protect everything and never allow anyone to destroy it. Protection is my Dao. At this moment, he found his Dao, and the heart that had been hanging for so long was finally completely at ease. He looked up at the heavens, unable to contain himself, and cried out loudly, I have found my own Dao. Now, step into the eight-aperture nascent soul, and go mad for the sake of protecting everything. As he spoke, he flipped his hand and produced a spirit pill, surrounded by crackling thunder. That was precisely the 6th grade spirit pill the Heart Sin Venerable had bestowed upon him, the Sky Shattering Pearl, capable of allowing those in the late stage of nascent soul to break through to the next level. Fang Chen could not wait to stuff the Sky Shattering Pearl towards his mouth. Yet, at the very instant the spirit pill was about to touch his lips, he suddenly halted, hesitating to swallow it for a long while. A trace of hesitation emerged in his eyes. The little Kilin had been watching his actions all along, and could not help but ask, Master, what is wrong? Why have you stopped? Fang Chen was silent for a moment, then said slowly, I don't know why, but I suddenly feel somewhat hesitant. Clearly, I have been obsessively dedicated to protecting everything, and along the way, I have truly acted upon it. Yet when it comes time to truly walk this path, I hesitated. He recalled the Heart Sin Venerable saying that the Tao of Divinity transformation was like a shooting star streaking across the firmament, sublimating oneself to the extreme, burning NG up, exhausting one's life, and transforming into a dazzling radiance that swoops down upon the vast earth. But would he truly go mad for the sake of protecting something? If it were for Fairy Yunsheng, for the true word venerable, for Gong Caiyi, perhaps he would. However, to say he would go mad for protecting all the living beings of the Central Plains. It seemed not really. He would only exhaust all his abilities to protect them, but not necessarily go mad. But if it is not the Tao of protection, then what is his own Tao? For a moment, he did not know how to choose. Should he force himself to cultivate the Tao of protection, or should he seek enlightenment anew? Suddenly, Fang Chen remembered Bai Xin's words. Return to where everything began, and ask your own heart. After a long silence, he slowly lowered the sky-shattering pearl from his lips. His heart hesitated, proving that this was not the Tao he was most obsessed with. But if not the Tao of protection, then what Tao was it? Just then, a gentle, moist breeze blew again. He could not help but look down upon the vast earth below. An endless expanse of lush green grassland suddenly came into view. A gentle breeze swept by, causing the green grass to bow low, revealing a group of small beasts grazing among the blades. Fang Chen laughed in surprise and said, "To think I have drifted to this place." This place was precisely the grassland that Ling Shu had yearned for in her heart. She had always longed to build a house here, chop wood and herd horses, watch the clouds roll by, and listen to the silent whispers of the stars. On that mountain not far away, there was still the grave he had personally erected for her. A warm smile curved at the corner of Fang Chen's mouth. He leaped into the air and landed on the mountain peak, his gaze falling upon the grave that already had no tombstone. The grave was already abandoned, overgrown with weeds. The tombstone had also been taken away by Ling Shu. She erased the two characters, Chinese letter, the tomb from it, and cherished it well. Fang Chen still remembered how he had once sat before the grave, filled with sorrow and grief, keeping Ling Shu company for an entire month. Later, when Ling Shu came back to life, he held her in his arms, and the two spoke through tears. Everything seemed like it was just yesterday. Fang Chen smiled gently. But then, as if he suddenly remembered something, the smile on his face abruptly froze. The little Kilin asked in surprise, "Master, what is wrong with you?" Fang Chen immediately sat cross-legged before the grave, a look of intense enlightenment appearing in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "I think I know what my true Tao is." The little Kilin blinked and asked, "What is it?" Fang Chen patted the grave beside him, a complex look emerging in his eyes. "I once felt distressed and sorrowful for Ling Shu, once drowned by regret. But was that because of how deep my feelings for Ling Shu were? It was not. At that time, our feelings were far from being so deep as to cause such heart-wrenching pain, and the reason I was grieved." He lowered his head and glanced at the nascent soul within his dantian, feeling a faint pain emanating from it, and the enlightenment in his eyes deepened further. "It was actually because I could not accept the passing of those close to me. I feared leaving behind eternal regrets. Striving to marry Liu Ruxu, testing poison on myself to save Fairy Yunsheng, fighting desperately against the demon clan for the 9 Sex land, all of it was to avoid leaving regrets in life. I do not have the great heart of a sage to protect everything. Everything I have done was ultimately for myself, to avoid regrets." The light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter, releasing a dazzling, captivating radiance. "Leaving no regrets, that is the path I have always been walking. Therefore, when I chose the Tao of protection, my heart hesitated, because that was not my path at all." At this moment, Fang Chen's heart felt unprecedentedly light. It was as if the fog that had shrouded his heart had completely vanished like smoke. He once again took out the sky-shattering pearl, a smile on his lips, and without any hesitation, stuffed it into his mouth and gently swallowed it. Fang Chen murmured softly, "Come, my Tao of flawlessness." As the sky-shattering pearl entered his body, his already forged and tempered 7-aperture nascent soul cultivation broke through naturally and fiercely, like water flowing into a channel. The 8th aperture at last opened. He had finally reached one of the most dreaded realms for nascent soul warriors, the 8th aperture nascent soul. However, before Fang Chen could even feel the greatly augmented nascent soul power within him, an abnormal restlessness suddenly arose in his heart. An uncontrollable, frenzied emotion spread madly from the bottom of his heart. He was about to descend into a state of madness. "Little Killen, leave quickly. Don't come near me for now." While still conscious, Fang Chen hastily shouted out. Filled with worry and fear, the little Killen nevertheless rushed forward, tightly embraced Fang Chen's head, and then instantly teleported away, vanishing without a trace. At this moment, Fang Chen's eyes had gradually turned red. The last trace of clarity remaining in his eyes was being devoured bit by the color of madness. He slowly stood up, his steps staggering, and wandered aimlessly in all directions. Sometimes he looked up at the sky, sometimes he lowered his head to look beneath his feet, murmuring disjointedly. It is often said that life is unsatisfactory 8 or 9 times out of 10, just as the moon is often waning and rarely full, but who decreed this? Why can't everything go as one wishes? Why must life have regrets? Why must there be parting in life and death? My days are numbered, my life is but a lingering afterglow, so why should I still be concerned with so many things? I want everything to go my way, I want my remaining years to leave no regrets. If it is not perfect, I would rather destroy it all. In this moment, he completely fell into demonic madness. An indescribable aura of madness surged out from within him, spreading in all directions. Ling Shu's solitary grave, missing its tombstone, exploded with a thunderous blast and was instantly razed to the ground. The withered flowers surrounding the tombstone also all wilted and fell. Fang Chen stepped into the grassland. Wherever he passed, the withered grass rotted and turned into black sludge. Herds of cattle and sheep, swept by that wave of madness, immediately panicked and fled in all directions. Only a lame old ox suddenly let out an extremely mournful cry. One could see the bones at its broken leg shatter inch by inch, and finally exploded into a cloud of scarlet blood mist. The white clouds flowing through the sky also seemed to tremble faintly. All things with defects in the world were utterly destroyed. In the deepest recesses of Fang Chen's mind, at the peak of that boundless primordial void ancient tree, an extremely hoarse voice suddenly drifted down. He has actually walked the Dao of Flawlessness. Life is long. How can one not leave behind any regrets? Even gods, in the long river of time and space, let out long sighs. In the 100 Flowers Valley, peach blossoms bloomed splendidly, and butterflies fluttered gracefully. Beneath a peach tree, Priest Lingyan held a brush, a faint smile on her lips, leisurely writing characters. Suddenly, as if sensing something, the smile on her face abruptly vanished. She suddenly slammed the brush onto the table, and the splattered ink instantly ruined the painstakingly written calligraphy, defiling it into a messy blot. On her exquisite countenance, which usually bore neither joy nor sorrow, a rare trace of clear anger surfaced. Her gaze flickered as she looked far into the distance toward Fang Chen's location, speaking to herself with both anger and helplessness. How could he walk the Dao of Flawlessness, flawless? Yao Yu caused the death of so many humans at Boundary Mountain that matter is a flaw in his heart. Sooner or later, he will kill Yao Yu to comfort the souls of Boundary Mountain and make up for this regret. Who exactly taught him this path? Above the Imperial Observatory, the Grand Libationer stood with hands clasped behind his back, gazing toward the direction of the mainland. His brows furrowed slightly as he murmured, "To reach the end of this path, one must possess the means to reverse time itself, whose life is free of regret. If regrets exist, how else could they be mended, save by turning back the flow of time?" At that moment, from the direction of the island in the Divine Armament Province, an intense spatial fluctuation erupted. 2 burly men, stripped to the waist with dark red skin, stepped through the void, jointly hefting a colossal sword as black as ink and over 10 feet long. One of the men respectfully reported, "By our master's command, we deliver the supreme, great spirit sword ordered by the Grand Libationer." The Grand Libationer withdrew his gaze and let it fall upon the black giant sword. A sharp gleam flashed in his eyes as he exclaimed in astonishment, "No wonder your master exceeded the deadline. He actually forged a spirit weapon from that otherworldly meteorite." The brawny man continued, "Our master said that this might be his last time forging a supreme, great spirit sword, and since it was commissioned by the Grand Libationer himself, he chose to use that mysterious meteorite. He also said that the stone inherently carries a malevolent nature. Those who cannot control it must never use it, lest they suffer backlash." The Grand Libationer nodded slightly and said indifferently, "Indeed, it is a wicked sword, but that is of no consequence. When a righteous person wields wicked methods, the methods become righteous. When a wicked person wields righteous methods, the methods become wicked. A sword is nothing more than a tool. Whether it is righteous or evil depends on the one who wields it." After setting the black sword down securely, the two brawny men cupped their fists and withdrew. The Grand Libationer shut his eyes to sense the black sword, then sighed softly. It lacks an artifact spirit. This sword's malevolence is so overwhelming that no ordinary vengeful spirit could endure its might. Finding a suitable artifact spirit is truly no easy task. Within the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion, Fairy Yunsheng gently wiped away the fragrant sweat, withdrew her divine power, and spoke in a soft voice. Xiaoyan, let us end today's sparring here. Take time to digest what you've learned. It will greatly benefit your cultivation. Nangong Xiaoyan gave a sweet smile and obediently replied, Thank you, Sister Yunsheng. She watched as Fairy Yunsheng gradually disappeared into the distance, then her smile faded, replaced by a deep sense of guilt and complicated emotion. Suddenly, she seemed to sense something. Her eyes flickered, and she hurried back to the secret chamber. After sealing the stone door, she cautiously set up a sound, isolating barrier. Only then did she carefully withdraw from her bosom a piece of wood carved with arcane patterns. It was unmistakably a rare spirit-nurturing wood, a precious spiritual timber used to nourish souls. At that moment, a soul the size of a fist swirled up from the wood, coalescing. Looking closely, it was the soul of Chen Jing. Chen Jing frantically tried to break free from the spirit-nurturing wood, but golden runes continuously surged from the wood, adhering him firmly in place, making escape impossible. His face contorted into a hideous twist, as he roared furiously at Nangong Xiaoyan. Fang Chen slept with my woman, he slept with my woman. I swear an irreconcilable hatred. Let me out. Since he slept with my woman, then I'll go sleep with his. Nangong Xiaoyan's expression grew complicated as she bit her lip. Brother, have you still not calmed down? As it turned out, after Chen Jing bit off his own tongue and died, his soul left his body and, in a fury, tried to charge into the secret chamber to stop the union between Fang Chen and Venerable Zhenyan. It was Nangong Xiaoyan who captured his soul in time, sealing and nurturing it within this spirit-nurturing wood. Blood is thicker than water. No matter what, Chen Jing was still her own flesh and blood elder brother. When Chen Jing was prospering, she resented his heartlessness and selfishness. But seeing him fallen so low, pity arose within her, and so she preserved his soul, planning to find a suitable opportunity for him to seize a body and be reborn. Nangong Xiaoyan's face turned icy, as she sternly rebuked him. I saved you to give you a chance to turn over a new leaf, not so you could harm Fang Chen and those around him again. Continue your reflection. When you truly understand your wrongs, then I will help you with rebirth. She angrily closed the lid of the spirit-nurturing wood and resealed it. From within the wood immediately erupted an even more violent howl from Chen Jing. Ungrateful wretch, I am your blood brother. What is Fang Chen to you? Yet you side with him so readily. Just wait. Once I get out, I won't spare you either. Above the continent, Fang Chen still wandered aimlessly. Wherever he passed, utter destruction followed. Without realizing it, he arrived before a mountain range that had once been snapped in half at the waist. That broken range was the result of a ferocious battle between the nascent soul, perfected ones of Taking Province, and the ancient giants. Beneath the mountains lay both the burial ground of the Scarlet Demon, Great Venerable, and the subterranean caverns of the Silver Fox tribe. At this moment, several young silver foxes with bushy tails were patrolling the vicinity. One silver fox gazed at a companion with undisguised envy and spoke. Xiaoya, I'm so envious of you. Sister Yunxia sent you so many resources individually. You're already a great demon at the 6th layer of core formation. Another silver fox chimed in with a sour tone. You can't envy that. Back then, it was Xiaoya who brought Senior Fang underground, inadvertently leading to Sister Yunxia and Senior Fang spending the night in the same cave dwelling. That's how the Bondi was formed. The first fox added, Exactly. Sister Yunxia remembers Xiaoya's good deed, so she looks after her specially. Hearing this, the exceptionally soft and beautiful fox demoness Xiaoya hurriedly waved her hands in fluster. Oh, don't talk nonsense. The clan chief ordered us to keep what happened that night absolutely secret. But after she spoke, her crystalline eyes dimmed slightly. A faint regret quietly surged from the depths of her heart. Why hadn't she been the one to form that bond back then? Senior Fang had also saved her twice. One could say they were fated. Sadly, after that, there had been no further intersection. But it was only a trace of light regret hidden in her heart. How could she dare compare herself to Sister Yunxia? It was only because they brought up Fang Chen that she felt a faint, wistful sense of loss. All of a sudden, she caught a whiff of decay. She looked up and her expression abruptly changed. She saw a figure walking slowly toward them along the broken mountain ridge. Everywhere he stepped, the withered, dead grass on the ground rotted into mud. Yet the normal green grass beside it remained unharmed and full of life. When she clearly saw the person's face, Zayuoya was instantly stunned and cried out, "Senior Fang." Shocked and overjoyed, she no longer cared about the strange aura enveloping Fang Chen and ran forward eagerly to meet him. However, the moment she stepped near, an invisible wave of madness invaded her body. Zayuoya's body trembled violently, and she suddenly pressed her hand to her chest as an indescribable agony surged through her. It was the taste of heartbreak. Unable to restrain herself any longer, she involuntarily threw herself into Fang Chen's arms and wailed through streaming tears. "Senior Fang, why? Why did you choose Sister Yunxia back then instead of me? If I cannot be your woman in this life, I would rather die." Zayuoya abruptly yanked the hairpin from her head, its sharp point glinting with cold light, and without hesitation stabbed it toward her own temple. At the critical moment, a long foxtail cut through the air, flashing silver, and swept Zayuoya's entire body away. Only when that gentle force carried her over 30 meters away, far from Fang Chen, did Zayuoya awaken as if from a dream, staring blankly at the hairpin clenched in her hand. She subconsciously touched the cold tear stains on her face, her expression utterly bewildered. She murmured to herself, I, what happened to me?" Just then, an aged and solemn voice sounded from beside her. Silver Fox Clan Chief Jiu Yinju looked at her with a heavy gaze and sighed. "You were infected by Perfected One Fang's madness." Zayuoya trembled all over and cried out in disbelief, "Senior Fang has already stepped into the 8th Aperture Nascent Soul. He was only at the 2nd layer of Nascent Soul when he left the continent. How has he reached the 8th Aperture stage in such a short time?" Jiu Yinju's deeply wrinkled face revealed a complex mix of emotions, both gratification and intense worry. He was gratified that Yunxia had married an unparalleled genius. Yet he worried even more about the sheer terror of the madness that Fang Chen now carried. This madness not only had the power to destroy anything flawed in the physical world, but on the mental plane it would also infinitely magnify the inner imperfections of others, collapsing their minds entirely. If a person's heart was pure and flawless, then it would be much easier for them. The madness would have almost no effect on such a person. But once the heart bore imperfections, the consequences would be nothing short of catastrophic. At that moment, Jiu Yinju's face suddenly changed dramatically. He watched Fang Chen, who was still drawing near, and raised his voice in a shout, "Venerable Fang." That deep shout exploded like a thunderclap. Fang Chen, who had fallen into madness, felt a sense of response from the nascent soul in his abdomen. The scar on it twitched slightly, and a sharp pain suddenly struck. Fang Chen suddenly regained clarity. An invisible surge of madness returned to his body like a tide, rushing back from all directions. He looked around blankly, his face full of astonishment. Hadn't he been breaking through to the Atorifice nascent soul in front of Ling Shu's grave? How had he arrived at the Silver Fox tribe? Immediately, his expression tightened, and he quickly scanned the crowd, saying urgently, "I didn't hurt any of you, did I?" Jiu Yinju secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but still kept his distance. His eyes full of wariness, he cupped his hands and said, "Venerable Fang, you should return to the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion as soon as possible and seal yourself away. Your madness intent is simply too dangerous." Just now, Zayuoya almost committed suicide. Fang Chen shifted his gaze to the tear-streaked face of Zayuoya, and a chill ran through his heart. He had only just stepped into the Atorifice nascent soul stage, with his madness intent newly formed, yet he could already drive someone to suicide. If his cultivation deepened, wouldn't he be able to kill people without a trace? This was far more perilous than a simple murderous madness intent, because a murderous madness intent might only target one person. But his madness intent would indiscriminately affect everyone around him. Fang Chen hurriedly retreated a few steps, quickly putting distance between himself and them. He showed an apologetic expression and said in a deep voice, "I'm sorry, I just broke through and haven't prepared the shackles to restrain myself. I'll take my leave now." He was also afraid that he might suddenly go mad again and bring harm to the innocent. But just as he was about to turn around, a thought suddenly occurred to him. Fang Chen asked, "By the way, have all the tribes near the Demon Emperor's palace been relocated?" The Demon Emperor's palace was originally located in a bitterly cold land. Many tribes were coerced by the Sky Demon Emperor to station there. Before leaving the continent, Fang Chen had ordered the dissolution of the tribes, allowing them to return to comfortable places to live. Jiu Yinju nodded and said, except for the 100-Flower Valley, there's hardly anyone left. A gleam flashed in Fang Chen's eyes. It was precisely the 100-Flower Valley that he wanted to ask about. Priestess Ling Yin, how much do you know about her? As a centenarian of the demon race, Jiu Yinju should know some secrets. A trace of wariness surfaced in Jiu Yinju's eyes, and he said slowly, I only know 2 things about her. First, her appearance has never changed. Hearing this, Fang Chen fell into deep thought. That wasn't too unusual. The women of the sea demon race also possessed the ability to maintain a youthful appearance. But Jiu Yinju's next words gave him a sudden shock. This was told to me by my grandmother when I was little. Fang Chen's pupils shook violently. If Jiu Yinju's grandmother had also seen Ling Yin when she was young, wouldn't that add up to 200 years? Even though the divine transformation realm grants a lifespan of 800 years, one's appearance still eventually ages with time. Jiu Yinju then said in a deep voice, the second is that no one knows what she is thinking. Fang Chen heartily agreed with this. For example, she gave Yunzia a soul-nurturing pill beforehand, and as a result, shortly after, he ended up uniting with Yunzia because of that pill. And Ling Shu, for instance, she gave Ling Shu a cup of spirit tea in advance, which later led to her fake death and also the scar on Fang Chen's nascent soul. Now, she used a letter to inform Fang Chen that his death was imminent. What exactly was her intention? It seemed he had to go see Ling Yin and properly ask about the doubts in his heart. Fang Chen cupped his hands and asked, thank you for telling me. Is there anything the demon clan needs help with recently? Jiu Yinju shook his head and said, Yan Shang has already sent plenty of resources. We don't need anything for now. Hearing this, a warm feeling stirred in Fang Chen's heart. During the days he was bustling around outside, Yan Shang had taken meticulous care of the Heavenly Secrets Pavilion and the demon clan, saving him a great deal of trouble. Meeting Yan Shang in this life was his immense fortune. Fang Chen cupped his hands and said, in 1 more month, the ancient giants will descend. I will arrange for some Asura clansmen to come and protect the continent and resist the ancient giants. When the time comes, just focus on saving your own lives. The main battlefield would still be concentrated on the Taikang continent. Those giant kings probably wouldn't personally come to this continent. It would suffice to just guard against the ordinary ancient giants. Jiu Yinju showed deep gratitude. Such a matter could not be decided by Fairy Yan Shang. Only Fang Chen could accomplish it. He bowed deeply and said in a trembling voice, thank you, Venerable Fang. Fang Chen nodded, lightly tapped the ground with his toes, and his body rose into the air, flying back to the mountain peak. In front of the blasted grave soil, the little Killen was hiding behind a small mound, peeking out half its head and watching him warily. Seeing this, Fang Chen couldn't help but laugh. I've woken up. Come on. The little Killen's eyes lit up, and with a smile, it used spatial teleportation to land steadily back on his shoulder. It blinked and said seriously, Master, should we also make a binding device for you? Whenever you go mad, I'll activate the device and knock you unconscious. The smile on Fang Chen's face instantly froze. His mind immediately conjured the image of when Song Lingyu went mad, and the device knocked her out with a single hammer blow. Fang Chen's face turned slightly green, and he quickly waved his hand, saying, forget it. Let's ask Ling Yin if there's some other method. The scar on the nascent soul in his abdomen was originally caused by Ling Yin. Perhaps Ling Yin also has a way to control the madness. Not long after, in front of the 100-Flower Valley, Fang Chen did not rashly enter. Instead, he first removed the heavenly thunderstone, the 3 long swords on his back, the spatial mirror, and other treasures. He only kept half of the orifice opening divine nail, hidden in his bosom. He lowered his head and instructed, you stay outside, don't go in. Ling Yin had once said she could save him 3 times. If he got into trouble, he could come to this 100-Flower Valley. But as a price, each time she acted, she would take one thing from Fang Chen. He had a faint suspicion that the death of the middle-aged Lei Yi was the work of Ling Yin. What if she wanted to take something from him? Other things would be one thing, but if she took treasures like the Black Buddhist scripture, the Supreme Spirit Sword, the Soul, Severing Brush, the Ancient Desolation Token, and others, Fang Chen wouldn't even have a place to cry. Therefore, he only kept half of the orifice, opening divine nail. First, to test Ling Yin and see if she was the owner of those terrifying golden eyes. Second, even if it really was her, he wouldn't suffer a devastating loss. With everything prepared, Fang Chen took a deep breath and stepped into the 100-flower valley. The valley, though not very large, was still filled with bird song and fragrant flowers, brimming with life. Pink peach blossoms filled the valley, blooming romantically and brilliantly. In the babbling streams, fish swam freely. Little spirit beasts frolicked happily among the flower beds. Beneath a small hill, Fang Chen saw that familiar figure. Ling Yin was sitting in a quaint pavilion, holding scissors and leisurely trimming the potted plants before her. Clad in a floor-length moon white dress, her dark hair cascading like a waterfall to her waist, her silhouette was gracefully enchanting. At first glance, she seemed like a fairy forgotten by time in a corner of the world, untouched by mortal desires. Fang Chen took a deep breath, suppressed his emotions, and stepped up to the pavilion. He respectfully cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Priestess Ling Yin." Ling Yin, however, acted as if she hadn't heard, continuing to trim the branches with no regard for him. Fang Chen looked up and Ling Yin's stunningly beautiful profile came into view. Although he had seen her many times, this time his heart couldn't help but pound. Her beauty did not belong to this mortal world. Ethereal and unreal. Fang Chen forced himself to look away and quell the waves in his heart. He spoke again, "Priestess Ling Yin, I have fulfilled your request and delivered that letter to the Heavenly Secrets Elder." Ling Yin still acted as if she hadn't heard, completely treating him as air. Fang Chen couldn't help but rub his nose, gradually sensing something amiss. He probed, his tone a bit uncertain, Are you angry with me?" As soon as the words left his mouth, Ling Yin's hands finally paused. She slowly turned her peerlessly beautiful face and glanced at him coolly. That ethereal and dreamy voice finally sounded, tinged with a hint of aloofness. "Is there something you need from me?" That tone? Could it really be that she was angry with him? Fang Chen was instantly dumbfounded. Just what exactly did I do to make Ling Yin angry? In his recollection, hadn't Ling Yin always been unflappable, beyond joy or sorrow? Only slightly better than Bai Xin, who had sealed away her emotions. After so long apart, the moment they meet, she is angry with him. The heart of a woman is truly inscrutable. Fang Chen dropped his casual demeanor, his expression solemn. "I merely came to report that the commission is complete, and to inquire if there is a method to promptly rouse oneself from madness." Ling Yin picked up the shears once more, unhurriedly trimming the branches and leaves in the flower pot, and replied coolly, "Simply apply a bit of sage blood." Sage's blood. Fang Chen's heart jolted. He mused that this method was as difficult as scaling heaven for him. Where would he obtain sage blood? The only two sages he knew. One had departed for an unknown realm, and the other was the Asura Holy Sun, who sought his life. It seemed he would simply have to bear the shackles of madness with resignation. Fang Chen waved his hand disheartenedly. "Forget I asked." Come to think of it, if controlling madness were truly that easy, the 8 and 9 orifice nascent soul cultivators of the 3 divine sects and 7 great religions would not be miserably confined in the madhouse. He had indeed been a bit too wishful. He hesitated a moment, then boldly inquired, "May I dare ask Priestess Ling Yin, what cultivation realm do you possess?" A crisp snap sounded as Ling Yin's shears closed forcefully, cleanly severing a thick, long, pitch-black root. She looked up with an expressionless face and coldly uttered, "Dealing with you is no issue." Fang Chen subconsciously clamped his legs together and warily retreated 2 steps. Today, Ling Yin is absolutely bristling with fury. He'd better come another day. The Ling Yin before him now instilled a deep-seated fear. Fang Chen hastily cupped his fists. "Since Priestess Ling Yin is occupied, I shall take my leave." So saying, he dared not inquire further and hastily turned to leave. Ling Yin watched his leg clamping, flustered retreat, and couldn't help but stifle a chuckle, her anger easing somewhat. She called out to his departing figure, "Since you have embarked on the path of flawlessness, from this moment on, there is but one thing for you to do. That is, to remedy your regrets. Ponder what regrets you harbor in this life, rectify what you can, and if you cannot, we shall see. Only thus can you awaken from the 9, orifice, nascent soul, and ascend to deity transformation." Fang Chen experienced a flash of enlightenment. It was as he had guessed. To rouse from madness, one must align with one's own Dao. Just like Shu Buxu, whose Dao of thievery required him to pull off a grand heist to possibly awaken and reach deity transformation. He halted, turned, and respectfully cupped his fists. "Many thanks for Priestess Ling Yin's guidance. Farewell." With that, he hastened away. Outside the Valley of 100 Flowers, Fang Chen reached into his robes and retrieved the half-length divine orifice opening spike. He frowned slightly, murmuring to himself, "The item was not taken, then the one who saved me was not Priestess Lingyan. Did I overthink things?" After musing for a long while, he shook his head. "Overthinking is futile, better to attend to more pressing matters." Yet Fang Chen knew not that in the pavilion, Lingyan held between 2 fingers a lush green leaf radiating layers of profound and mysterious essence. She mused with intrigue. "So this is the legendary leaf of the Taixu divine tree." With a graceful wave of Lingyan's slender hand, a pot of wine materialized before her. She immersed the leaf in the wine. Upon touching the liquid, the leaf dissolved instantly, turning into myriad emerald radiances that merged into the wine. In that instant, the pot of wine was saturated with pristine, pure laws. Lingyan smiled faintly, praising, "A single leaf embodies countless laws, as expected of the Taixu divine tree. Next time, I shall try to refine a sword from a branch." Meanwhile, at the entrance to the main hall of the Spirit Beast sect master, an old woman in a red dress and green robe, garishly made up, along with assorted gifts, was hurled out violently by a fierce gust of wind. From within the hall came Gong Caiyi's furious voice. "Issue the order. From now on, anyone coming to propose marriage is forbidden from setting foot in the Spirit Beast sect." The matchmaker's face alternated between green and white as she muttered under her breath, "Still acting as if you're Fang Chen's woman, putting on airs. You're well past 30. Anyone willing to take you is already a blessing." Within the hall, Gong Caiyi heard every word, slammed the table, and shouted sharply, "Throw her out of the Spirit Beast sect." Yuan Jiyu quickly stepped forward and soothed, "Master, calm yourself. To be angry with a mere matchmaker, does it not harm your prestige?" Gong Caiyi erupted, "I am not angry at her, I am angry at—" She stopped mid-sentence, her pent-up rage with nowhere to vent. Yuan Jiyu understood. Her master was incensed that all the 8 great sects on the continent believed she had been abandoned by Fang Chen. For Fang Chen's other women had all followed him to the Tianji pavilion, and each had risen to great heights, at the very least becoming nascent soul grand cultivators. Only Gong Caiyi had been cast aside on this continent to fend for herself. The truth was known only to Gong Caiyi and Yuan Jiyu. But how could they explain to outsiders, especially the fact that Gong Caiyi had already consummated her relationship with Fang Chen? That was even more shameful to mention. Yuan Jiyu's eyes darted as she tentatively suggested, "Master, why not go to the Taking Grand State? Thus you could silence the incessant gossip. Otherwise, suitors will keep pouring in." That matchmaker at the door was far from the first to propose marriage. Since Gong Caiyi's return, there had been a steady stream of people, directly or indirectly, seeking to become her Dao companion. The reasoning was simple. Though Gong Caiyi had been cast off by Fang Chen, she had once been his woman for a spell, and she inevitably still possessed some of the precious resour ease he had left behind. Marrying Gong Caiyi would surely benefit one's martial path. At these words, Gong Caiyi grew even more agitated, thumping the table and grinding her teeth. "Fang Chen, this is all you're doing." She took several deep breaths, forced calm, and declared resolutely, "I will not go to the Taking Grand State. As for the suitors, block them if you can. If not, let it be. After all, there is only 1 month until the ancient giant's descent. They can only cause trouble for this single month." Seeing her master's firm resolve, Yuan Jiyu heaved a sigh of bitter disappointment. "Master, I was hoping you would go to Taking Grand State and bring me along." Everyone who followed Fang Chen to Tianji Pavilion had broken through to nascent soul. This was truly a heaven-sent opportunity. She often dreamed that she herself had gone to Tianji Pavilion and woke up laughing from her dreams. Yet her master was obstinate and simply would not seek out Fang Chen. Gong Caiyi gave her a sidelong glance and chided, "Your schemes are so loud they can be heard all the way in Taking Grand State." Yuan Jiyu stuck out her tongue and said playfully, "I only have my master's lifelong happiness at heart." As she was speaking, a newly recruited female disciple came to report. "Sect Master, a youth outside requests an audience with the Sect Master. He says he is here looking for his wife." Gong Caiyi's heart, which had only just calmed, grew turbulent once more. Yet she glanced down at her lower abdomen and forcibly restrained herself. She could not afford to get angry again. Gong Caiyi said icily, "Pick out a sow and give it to him. That is the wife he is looking for. Preposterous, seeking a wife in my Spirit Beast sect." "Are you certain my wife is a pig?" A voice tinged with amusement drifted in from outside the hall. Gong Caiyi sprang to her feet. That voice was. Under her nervous, fixed gaze, a youth in black robes strode in, his face brimming with smiles. Gong Caiyi's pupils constricted, her heart hammered, her mind a blank. She had long prepared herself for Fang Chen to seek her out. Yet when Fang Chen truly stood before her, she still could not stop her racing heart, flustered and panicked, like a maiden in the first flush of love, radiating a bashful shyness. Senior Fang, Yuanji, you bounced up in delighted surprise. A heaven-sent opportunity had come knocking.
She was even more excited than Gong Caiyi, hurriedly saying, Senior Fang, you need say nothing. I'll agree on behalf of my master.
I'll help her pack at once, and ensure you're back at Tianji Pavilion for your wedding night before dusk. Gong Caiyi's face flushed red as she snapped, Out, all of you out. Yuan Jiyu hastily tugged at her sleeve and pleaded in a low voice, Master, you must be pleasant. Whatever Senior Fang asks of you, you do it. Do not be obstinate. Your disciple's future rests entirely on you, Master. So saying, she hurriedly pulled the newly arrived female disciple away. The female disciple asked with a face full of shock, Senior Sister, is that young man the legendary Senior Fang Chen? Yuan Jiyu nodded. You are truly fortunate. You just arrived at our spirit beast sect and already met Senior Fang. Nowadays, he is a renowned late, nascent soul cultivator throughout Taking Province. Like a divine dragon, showing only its head but not its tail, only those with profound destiny can glimpse his true visage. You are bound for great accomplishments in the future. The female disciple puffed out her chest proudly and said, I too have met Senior Fang. From now on, whoever wants to marry me must double the betrothal gifts. Inside the hall, Gong Caiyi pursed her rosy lips slightly, her gaze evasive, not daring to meet Fang Chen's eyes, and complained softly, Why have you returned? Was I not clear enough that day? A hint of a smile played at the corner of Fang Chen's lips as he stepped onto the jade steps with unhurried grace and walked straight up to Gong Caiyi. Gong Caiyi retreated backward timidly, her voice trembling. Don't come any closer. She kept retreating until, unexpectedly, the backs of her knees struck the wide jade seat of the sect master behind her. Her body tilted, and she fell into it unprepared. She hurriedly tried to stand, but Fang Chen bent down and planted his hands firmly on both sides of the chair's backrest. At such close proximity, he gazed at Gong Caiyi with a smile. Their faces were mere inches apart, so close they could clearly hear each other's breathing. Not to mention standing up, Gong Caiyi had no room to evade at all. She reached out her slender hand and pressed it lightly against Fang Chen's chest, saying bashfully, Don't do this. Fang Chen remained motionless, the smile on his face growing even more intense. Staring at her, he said, You weren't this shy when you gave yourself to me back then. Hearing this, Gong Caiyi's pretty face instantly flushed crimson. Embarrassed and anxious, she turned her head away. Don't bring that up, it's all in the past. You be the chief vice pavilion master of your heavenly secrets pavilion, and I'll be the spirit beast sect master. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Fang Chen laughed and captured her small hands, teasing, How do you know I am the chief vice pavilion master of the heavenly secrets pavilion? You say we have nothing to do with each other, but you've been secretly keeping tabs on me all along, haven't you? He let out a hearty laugh, pulled Gong Caiyi from the chair, then turned and sat on the jade seat himself. Immediately after, he yanked her into his arms. One large hand, as if well practiced, slipped into her lapels. Gong Caiyi's beautiful face paled in fright. She hurriedly pressed down his misbehaving hand and cast an anxious glance at the open entrance of the great hall, whispering urgently, Don't act rashly, the door is still open. Fang Chen withdrew his hand and waved casually at the hall door. A muffled rumble sounded as the heavy door slowly swung shut. The light inside the hall instantly dimmed. Fang Chen lowered his head to her ear and whispered with a laugh, The door is closed, can we continue now? Gong Caiyi's face flushed scarlet with shame. Struggling fiercely in his arms, she cried, That's not what I meant, Fang Chen, we can't continue this anymore. Ignoring her protests completely, Fang Chen's hand once again slipped into her lapels and directly grasped a true white. Perhaps because he knew his time was near, his mindset had quietly changed. He no longer suppressed his inner desires as he used to. He had become increasingly unrestrained in his actions. Gong Caiyi let out a low cry and hastily pressed down Fang Chen's hand, her eyes so full of shame they seemed about to drip water. She begged piteously, Fang Chen, if you respect me, please don't do this. Hearing this, Fang Chen gently withdrew his hand, but still held her tightly in his arms. His voice tender, he said, Come back to me, walk with me a little longer. I don't want you to become the eternal regret of my life. Since embarking on the path of cultivation, his greatest regret was undoubtedly Gong Caiyi's departure. Back then, Gong Caiyi gave him her most precious chastity, but she remained alone on this barren continent. Everyone else followed him and enjoyed the most top-tier cultivation resources. Only she, the woman who had once given him boundless tenderness, guarded the old place in solitude. Listening to Fang Chen's gentle words, Gong Caiyi finally stopped struggling and sat quietly in his arms. The light in her eyes dimmed as she murmured wistfully, "You are now a great late, nascent soul cultivator, and I am just a small core formation cultivator. The difference between us is already like heaven and earth. There can be no future for us." Fang Chen held her hand tightly, his gaze burning as he retorted, "Then back when I was only a minor foundation establishment disciple, and you were the lofty master of the 9 CTS, why did you not look down on me?" Gong Caiyi gently shook her head and said softly, "That was different. I was your senior, and you were just a junior. There is nothing wrong with a senior looking after a junior." Fang Chen laughed. "If it is natural for seniors to look after juniors, then isn't it even more natural for a man to look after his own woman?" These words left Gong Caiyi speechless, at a loss for how to refute him for a moment. Fang Chen continued, "I know what you're worried about. You're afraid that you can't keep up with my cultivation and will become a burden to me, aren't you?" Gong Caiyi hesitated for a moment before nodding in admission. She hadn't expected that Fang Chen had long since discerned the true reason for her departure. Gong Caiyi lifted her head, a flash of resolution in her eyes, and said slowly, "It's good that you understand, so let me go. I will never allow myself to become your burden. Perhaps you could force me to stay by your side, but the pain in my heart is something you can never change." Hearing this, Fang Chen could not help but let out a soft sigh. People who are too kind always tend to find fault in themselves, preferring to bear all the suffering alone. And there was only one way to resolve this. That was to make her truly feel her own worth. Gently stroking the back of Gong Caiyi's hand, he said slowly, "I actually have another purpose for coming here. I need your help with something." Surprised, a self-deprecating smile tugged at the corner of Gong Caiyi's mouth. She asked softly, "What could someone like you possibly need the help of a mere core formation cultivator like me for? You just want to coax me into feeling important, don't you?" "Fang Chen, stop wasting your time and energy on me. I haven't been worth it for a long time." Fang Chen looked at her quietly. "I have already reached the 8 aperture nascent soul stage." Gong Caiyi merely nodded slightly, not showing any surprise. With Fang Chen's talent, reaching the 8 aperture nascent soul stage was only a matter of time. But then she suddenly realized something. She whipped her head around and stared at Fang Chen in shock. "Then you could go mad at any moment." Fang Chen nodded, his expression calm. "For now, it's only occasional madness, but once I step into the 9 aperture nascent soul stage, I will completely descend into insanity. Even I don't know if I will ever wake again in this life." Upon hearing this, Gong Caiyi's face was filled with worry. She knew well the peril of the 9 aperture nascent soul. Those who could awaken after falling into madness were as rare as phoenix feathers and killin horns. Her heart instantly felt as if it were crushed by an invisible hand, so heavy she could barely breathe. She said urgently, "Then stop breaking through. Stay at the 8 aperture nascent soul realm." But Fang Chen shook his head, his tone solemn. "The ancient giants are about to descend. They will surely seek revenge on me. With only the cultivation of the 8 aperture nascent soul realm, it will be very difficult for me to survive." These words made Gong Caiyi feel as if her heart was being wrung by a giant hand, her breathing becoming difficult. The resolve to forget Fang Chen by Fang Lake was instantly scattered by the unbearable compassion filling her heart. She asked with a trembling voice, "What should be done then? Has any senior told you a way to resolve this?" Fang Chen nodded, his gaze profound. "Yes. A great senior once said that the path I cultivate is the Dao of Flawlessness. The fewer regrets in my heart, the greater the chance I will awake from the madness. And you are my greatest regret." Gong Caiyi suddenly understood. So whether one could awaken from madness was actually linked to the Dao they cultivated. But upon hearing that last sentence clearly, she felt a mixture of joy and bitterness in her heart. The joy was that she was so important to him that her departure had become his greatest regret. The bitterness was that she had no other choice. To prevent him from falling into eternal madness, she would have to obediently return to his side. This went completely against all the resolute words she had spoken earlier. Gong Caiyi bit her red lips lightly and asked in a low voice, "Am I truly your greatest regret?" Fang Chen immediately raised 2 fingers to the sky, his expression solemn. "I swear to the heavens." Before he could finish, Gong Caiyi hurriedly pressed down his raised fingers and said tenderly, "Don't make rash vows, I believe you." She gazed at Fang Chen like that, staring for a moment, and finally her body went limp, completely surrendering. She rested her head gently on Fang Chen's shoulder, raising her delicate fist to lightly pound his chest, and scolded him coyly. "You little rascal, I'm afraid I've fallen completely. Lie into your hands in this life." A surge of wild joy rose in Fang Chen's heart, and he quickly asked, "You're willing to come back to my side?" Gong Caiyi nestled her body into his embrace and said softly, "As long as I can help you, I'm willing to do anything." Fang Chen felt both joy and deep emotion, as if he was seeing once again that gentle, water-like sect leader Gong of the past. He couldn't help but lower his head and gently peck her smooth forehead, while his hands naturally closed around those two true whites. Gong Caiyi offered no further resistance, merely blushing and closing her eyes, letting Fang Chen do as he pleased. As long as he was happy, that was enough. However, when Fang Chen reached to untie the silk ribbon at her waist, she abruptly opened her eyes and batted his hand away, instinctively shielding her lower abdomen. The amorous atmosphere instantly froze. Fang Chen was startled and asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Is it inconvenient today?" Gong Caiyi felt a bitter taste in her heart. It wasn't just inconvenient today, it would be inconvenient for the next 10 whole months. After a brief hesitation, she ultimately decided to keep it a secret for now. The matter of the ancient giant had already put him under immense pressure. If he also learned that she was pregnant, it would only make him even more overwhelmed. It would be better to wait until the great battle was over, and then surprise him. She composed herself and told a small lie. You came at an unfortunate time." Fang Chen felt a pang of disappointment and said guiltily, "I'm sorry, I haven't been attentive enough to you." Seeing the crestfallen expression on Fang Chen's face, Gong Caiyi gently bit her lower lip, rose from his embrace, and then actually knelt before him. Fang Chen was shocked and exclaimed, "Ah, Caiyi, what are you doing?" He hastily reached out to help her up, but Gong Caiyi blushed and gently pressed him down, whispering, "Sit still, don't move around." As she spoke softly, Gong Caiyi slowly coiled her silky long hair. Then she bent forward slightly and lowered her head. The front of her robe inadvertently fell open with the movement, revealing a strand of damp hair clinging to her slightly flushed cheek. Still breathing unsteadily, she caught her breath for a few moments before picking up a teacup and carefully rinsing her mouth. Only then did Gong Caiyi suddenly realize that her mouth had gone numb, almost without any sensation. She couldn't help but raise her eyes and say with a hint of resentment, "Are you satisfied now?" Fang Chen, having just tasted a bit of sweetness and already craving more, was hardly willing to stop so easily and began to pester her endlessly. Even though Gong Caiyi's body was a bit inconvenient, he still clung to her with all sorts of entreaties. Her heart was in turmoil. She truly couldn't imagine what kind of life the cloud attire fairy usually led. Just then, Fang Chen sat upright on the chair in a lotus position, his hands leisurely pressed together in prayer, his expression still calm, but a relieved smile touched the corner of his mouth as he said indifferently, "I have attained enlightenment." Gong Caiyi was so amused by his appearance that she burst into a giggle, raised her hand to lightly punch his arm, and scolded with a laugh, "You really are something before the deed lecherous as a demon, after the deed saintly as a Buddha." The more she spoke, the funnier it seemed, and she pushed him again, teasing further, "We really should invite an accomplished monk from the White Horse Temple to properly convert you to Buddhism." Fang Chen finally couldn't help but laugh out loud, and with a stretch of his arm, he pulled her into his embrace. With practiced ease, he gently grasped one of those warm, soft true whites, lowered his voice, and coaxed, "I've wronged you. Once we return to the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion, and your body is more convenient, I'll make it up to you properly." Gong Caiyi's cheeks flushed with a hint of shyness, and she thought to herself, this guy, still not willing to give up. She reached out her fingertip and gently poked Fang Chen's forehead, opened her mouth as if to say something, but then hesitated. After a moment of silence, she finally lifted her gaze and spoke softly, "Fang Chen, I've thought it over. I won't go back to the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion with you." Fang Chen was immediately taken aback, his brow furrowing. "You've changed your mind." Gong Caiyi's expression was earnest and gentle as she explained quietly, "If I had changed my mind, I wouldn't have attended to you so devotedly just now." She paused briefly, her voice growing even softer. "I simply don't want to go to the Heavenly Mechanism Pavilion. If you miss me, you can come back to see me anytime." As she spoke, she looked up at him, her gaze as gentle as water. "My doors will always be open to you." Fang Chen's brow furrowed even deeper. He discerned the deeper meaning in her words. She meant that her heart could return, but her person, she was unwilling to come back. "Caiyi, do you have some unspeakable secret that you're deliberately keeping from me?" Fang Chen vaguely sensed something was off. Why did Gong Caiyi insist on staying alone on this continent? Clearly, everything would be better if she stayed by his side. Gong Caiyi didn't answer immediately, but silently lowered her eyes to glance at her own abdomen. She knew very well in her heart that if she followed him back to the heavenly mechanism pavilion, the changes in her body would sooner or later be impossible to hide from others, especially the Cloud Attire Fairy. That was why she was determined to stay here. If the situation with the ancient giant could be resolved smoothly, then she would treat this secret as a surprise and tell Fang Chen herself. But if this catastrophe continued to drag on, then she would stay on this continent alone and quietly give birth to the child.